Okay, good evening, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to our regular council meeting of August the 13th. Before we begin, I wish to acknowledge the Sooke Nation, upon whose traditional territory we are gathered this evening. We recognize and respect our neighboring First Nation government, as well as their historical relationship with the lands and sea that continues to this day. So, Council, looking at tonight's agenda, there's a couple of things. First off, if any member of the public is here for a development variance permit for 6507 Water Street, staff have removed that item from tonight's agenda, and notices will go out as to when that particular item will come back and be rescheduled. So, with approval of tonight's agenda, first off is to move. I'm looking for approval with the inclusion of the supplementary information and to move item 7.1, the public hearing for zoning amendment bylaw 710-2018, Lot 1, Water Street, to be moved to immediately following approval of tonight's agenda. And Councillor Parkinson, I believe, has a notice of motion that she would like to waive notice for and also move to directly following the public question. Well, in this case, it would be following 7.1, the public hearing. Well, you have to waive notice because otherwise it would just be introduced tonight and debated at the next meeting, but you would like to discuss it tonight, so it's to waive notice and to move it up. Are we clear on that? So there's the three items. It's the approval of the agenda with moving the one public hearing, addition of the supplementary information, and moving the notice of motion and making that 7.2. Moved by Councillor Berger and seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Any questions on the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Is carried unanimously. Okay, here we have meeting minutes to adopt, the July 9th special council meeting and July the 23rd meeting minutes. Moved adoption by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor Loggins. Are there any questions or corrections on either of those? Sorry, I had one. I'm just trying to... Bear with me for a second here. There was a comment here under my update of the July 23rd meeting. It says, and the Summer of the Arts. I think I was just commenting that it was a Summer of the Arts. I didn't actually attend a Summer of the Arts. So maybe that could just be maybe just struck off the agenda. It's in capitals, so it kind of looks like an event, but I didn't actually attend that event. It was just maybe remarking on the summer. I'm just trying to think of that context. So that would just be something maybe to strike out. Any other questions or corrections? Seeing none, I'll call the question on adoption. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried unanimously. We have meeting minutes here for council to receive. There's the June 20th Development and Land Use, July 18th Development and Land Use, and August the 1st Sooke Program of the Arts Committee. Move a receipt by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor Berger. Any comments from anyone, either of the committee chairs at this point? All of the recommendations come forward in a different report, so in case you're wondering about these are just to receive, and then recommendations would follow at a different time. Okay, all those in favor of adoption? Opposed? That also is carried unanimously, and then that puts us into the public hearing. Okay, and so this is for 7.1 zoning amendment bylaw number 710, 600-59, 2018, Lot 1, Water Street. And I'll turn that to staff, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. We're here for the public hearing and third reading for the zoning bylaw amendment for Lot 1, VIP 20069, the property across from and associated with 6526 Water Street. The applicant would like to amend the rural residential RU4 zone to allow a boathouse on the subject property as an accessory building without a principal building. Site context, the subject property is one of two rural residential lots located on Water Street. The subject property does not have a civic address. The applicant resides at 6526 Water Street, directly across from the subject property. The applicant is proposing to build a 31-meter squared, or approximately 338 square foot boathouse with a living roof and a cantilevered deck with davits extending over the foreshore in order to facilitate launching small pleasure craft on the shoreline. The proposed boathouse will not impact the views of houses upslope of the subject property, as there is a significant change in grade from the road to the shoreline. The subject property does not require site servicing. The environmental report submitted by the applicant was confirmed by Fish Kissing Weasel Environmental and demonstrated the proposed boathouse will not require shoreline protection works, avoid the use of foreshore pilings, not involve tree removal, retain most of the shoreline vegetation with the exception of pruning back some tall shrubs, maintain the root systems with some mountain ash removal depending on the species, have a construction footprint located in an area of invasive species, provide replanting of native species in any exposed areas post-construction, have a short construction timeline during the dry season with appropriate best management practices for construction, and be monitored by qualified environmental professionals. The edges of the construction areas will be clearly marked with flagging tape to ensure no disturbance outside of the project footprint. The current driveway and existing trails will be used to access the lot and remove non-native vegetation. The project has been designed to have minimal impacts on the environment, and this has been established by the confirming report from Fish Kissing Weasel and the head of Parks and Environmental Services. Supports the applicant's building design and construction plan. The applicant has applied for a development variance permit and floodplain exemption. This will be coming towards you at an upcoming meeting if this application is successful and goes forward for adoption. Staff finds the boathouse to be an appropriate use and level of development on the subject property. These two concepts show the boathouse from the shore upslope and from the upslope down to shore. Well, that was weird. Staff recommends this application as the applicant has supplied the district with ample information and taken action to mitigate environmental impacts as much as possible. The applicant, Julie Budgeon, is in the audience and here to speak to her application and answer any of your questions that you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Everts. Does the applicant have anything further to add to the presentation at this time? You would please, please do, and if you could please turn on the microphone.
Hi, I'm Julie Budgeon. Thanks, Tanisha, for presenting that. I think Tanisha covered everything. I am a qualified environmental professional, so I deal with these kind of projects all the time. It's a great opportunity for me to deal with it on my property. My house is in the background there, so I don't want to block my view, which is why we want a small structure. There's trees on either side that are remaining in place, so that's kind of our view down to the water where we see a lot of wildlife. For the actual use of the facility, we don't have a motorized vehicle or boat. If we did, we would just keep it on the dock. This is just for our like kayaks and paddleboards and everything for easy access into the water because it's quite steep even down the ramp there to get to the water. And I'm Green Shore Level 2 certified, so I'm looking forward to the opportunity to utilize that training on my own property. So that's everything from me.
Thank you very much, Ms. Budgeon. If you could just remain there, I'll just see if there's any questions from council before we head into the public hearing. Councillor Casper?
Yes, thank you. So I take it that part of your rationale for having an upland building as opposed to one on the water is so that you can actually make sure that it's safe and secure and you can visually see it, whereas if it was on the water, you would probably have a hard time seeing it from the location of your house.
I'm okay with not seeing it. Like we'll have a way to secure it. It's more for the flood zoning and potential waves, and also our communication with the provincial government for having structures over top of the water. So we have it back with the davit going out to lower things down. Also, there's a tiny little beach down there, so we don't want to have something over top of it.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else from members of council? No? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Budgeon.
Okay.
You may take a seat again. Okay, so we'll head into the public hearing then. And before we do, there is just this statement that I need to read. This public hearing is being held pursuant to the Local Government Act. At this public hearing, any person who believes that their interest in property is affected by the proposed bylaw will be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the bylaw that are the subject of this hearing. Copies of written submissions received to date are available, and Council, you have received one in this package. It is important that all who speak at this hearing restrict their remarks to matters contained in the bylaw, and it is my responsibility as chair of this hearing to ensure that all remarks are so restricted. For those of you who wish to speak at the appropriate time, please commence your address to Council by clearly stating your name and home address. Then you may give us the benefit of your views concerning the proposed bylaw. Submissions must be received before or during the public hearing in order to be considered by Council. Members of Council may, if they so wish, ask questions of you following your presentation or submission. However, the main function of Council members this evening is to listen to the views of the public. It is not the function of Council at this public hearing to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with individual citizens. Everyone who deems his or her interest in property to be affected shall be given the opportunity to be heard at this hearing. No one will be or should feel discouraged or prevented from making his or her views known. And please note that this hearing forms part of tonight's regular meeting of Council and as such is being video recorded. Videos and their contents, including any personal information disclosed during the public hearing, will be posted on the district's website. So on that note, I'd like to welcome anyone forward to speak on Bylaw 710 for the zoning amendment bylaw 46526 Water Street. Sir, if you could please just turn on the microphone. There's just a button at the base there. Thank you, sir.
My name is John Nicholson, and I live on Soule Street, 2008 Soule Street. And I have 4 water lots directly below me, so I'm in much the same position as Julie. I have a boathouse as well. Well, I do have a boathouse, not as well, because Julie hasn't gotten hers yet. But I have it built out over the water. And I have 4 pilings. I sent an email showing 4 pictures. Is that available to show to staff and audience?
Not to the audience. Council received that in their supplementary package this afternoon.
Okay, so the pictures show there? Yes? Okay, so I took a look at Julie's application, and it just seemed that she was going really. She was being asked a very lot. She was being asked a lot to do that I didn't see the necessity of. Probably about half a dozen pages of her report deal with environmental impact for putting the boathouse on the upper bank of the foreshore, and it's really why put it there? Why not just stick it on pilings out in the water? It's a boathouse. It's not a car. It's not a playhouse for the kids or anything. It's a place to put boats, and it's certainly much easier to do that out on the water than it is on the shore. I got the impression when I was reading over the material there, although it's not been said directly, that the city, the district, does not want anybody to build out over the water or on those water lots, and that takes away a lot of the value of the lots if that's the case. Those lots are unique. They go out to low water mark, and the province recognizes that. So the province really doesn't have a say in whether we can build out over the water or not, but the district has certainly been putting a lot of what I would call roadblocks to discourage anybody from doing that. So that's a concern of mine because it directly affects the value of my property. If it's not recognized that if the district does not recognize those lots going out to low water, then I've literally lost thousands of dollars because my lots go out under the water as well. I also had a picture showing the park at the end of Kennedy. And, whoever did that did a very nice job. But all the vegetation there was scoured. There's nothing left there. In a year, the grass will have grown again. It'll be a beautiful little open area. But to say that we've got, a unique environment in terms of stinging nettles and blackberries and horsetails and on it goes is ridiculous. That whole area has been lived in since the 1850s. So we're talking, 170 years of man's interruption. And then I took a picture of a fir tree that's leaning out over the bank on my property. Now I don't know if it shows that I had a steel cable put up on that tree about 20 or 25 years ago to try and hold it back. Well, the cable is finally snapped. I'm going to have to take that tree down. The reason it has to come down is because of the erosion that's been taking place. That tree didn't start growing out sideways. It started like that in its younger days and has been growing like that over the years. So we need to protect the foreshore. But if we can't do that because it's against fisheries and it's against the district and blah, 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 it just makes no sense to me. So I'm not speaking against Julie's application. She's a neighbor. I respect her. She's helped me out a number of times. But it just seems to me that she's been put in a position that, she's complied with everything that you've asked, and she'll get the amendment or the amendment to the zoning, and great. But I just feel that going that route instead of insisting on your property rights is the wrong way to go. There was one other thing I wanted to mention. In the beginning, and at the opening pages of Bylaw 600, it says that one of your goals is not to devalue properties with your zoning bylaws. That's a policy. That's your policy. But that's what's going to be happening. And then the other thing it says is you're trying to work towards efficiencies. Well, this zoning amendment that's being required, that's being looked at today, is just specific to her lot. Right next to it, there's another lot, the same zoning, an RU4. Why not have it amended for that lot as well? Because if that person wants to stick out a boathouse somewhere down the road, he's got to go through the same thing again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholson.
Any questions?
Hello, my name's Tom White, 5877 Sooke Road. I'm here to support Julie's application. I own a couple of lots on Water Street myself, and I think the development there would be a good thing. I also share some of John's concerns, which I'm not going to go into because you've already heard it. That's about what I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Mr. Wood, is that correct?
White.
Mr. White, okay, thank you. Other comments from members of the public? Call for a second time for any members of the public on this application. Call for a third and final time. Does the applicant have anything to respond to? No? Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'll close the public hearing on this matter and turn back to council. Are there other questions from members of council? Okay, move third reading by Councillor Casper and seconded by Councillor Berger. Anything on the motion or third reading? Nope. All those in favor then? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Okay, thank you. So as we've shifted here, we're moving now to, we've moved item 5 15.1, the notice of motion from Councillor Parkinson forward now. So I will turn to Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So my notice of motion is that the District of Sooke present and fund the Canada Day event as a district event for the public, and that the Sooke Lions Club administer and manage the event on behalf of the district. And the reason for my request for this is the Lions Club was actually asked by the previous mayor to hold the Canada Day celebrations basically on behalf of the district, trying to find someone to run it each year. The Lions Club has been running it for the past 6 years, and it's becoming quite a large event. They have to go around and they have to also ask businesses for donations to be able to fund this event. The Canada Day that just passed cost approximately $18,000 to put on. So for the Lions Club to be able to do that, they could either curb back on some of the events and make it a smaller thing, or we could move forward and take it on like we do for the Christmas parade. The district looks after the Christmas parade, and the Lions Club put it on for us. And I feel that the Canada Day celebration should be done the same way.
So we recently had a member of the Lions present to us, I think, for a funding request, and at that time, council asked staff to come back, and I can't remember, it was to dedicate a certain sum of funds as a line item funding. Was it 10,000, or I can't remember, 7,000? 10,000? Give me 10, 5,000? 10,000, okay. Thank you, sir.
That was 2 bucks.
Okay. I think the request was for 10,000 and that we would have a staff report back. So this is come forward now from Councillor Parkinson, and we've heard reasoning for that. Questions, Councillor Casper?
Yeah, if this is supported, then I would hope that what we could also do is make some arrangements either through with the community association and with the Lions to have our insurance policy, our insurer, to cover them for any third-party liability issues that may arise by providing such services to the district, so that their organization won't be penalized by their own insurer. And I think that would protect the community, the Lions, and the district from any unforeseen circumstance.
Yep, that's a very good point. It's the same, I think, for when we, I would agree with that for some of our other events. Other comments from members of council? Councillor Pearson?
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Parkinson, thank you for bringing this forward. I think it's been obvious that it should become a line item, and that we should be supporting it as a district, because I think it's become a really big success in our community, and it's part of our summer now. So I'll be supporting any motion. So thank you.
Okay, I would agree as well, and I thank the Lions for managing to get us to this point over the years. Usually take the summer off, well deserved. It seems that you all end up working all summer long though, so maybe next year you can have the summer off. You probably think of something else to do for our community, so we appreciate that very much. So in terms of Councillor Parkinson, in your motion there, it's to fund the Sooke Canada Day. Do you have a sense of then what should be our direction to staff to put into the line item for the budget? We're hearing it's about 18,000.
And I would say that next year it would probably go up somewhat. So I would think that, from my understanding, we look after all the bills from the Christmas parade and take care of that so that they don't have to go out and fundraise. So I would think that we would do the same thing, and we could actually put a cap on it if we like, and we could cap it at 20,000. So when they book the bands or the entertainment and things like that, they know that they can't just, book the big Las Vegas bands and stuff like that or something. So, yeah, okay. I think that we should put
I think there should be a amount in there. It was just the only piece that was missing. Okay.
So it would be the 20,000.
Okay. So, Councillor Parkinson, would you like to move that then with the amount of 20,000 in there?
Yes, please.
Okay. And seconded by Councillor Pearson. Discussion on the motion. Anything further? Okay. All right. All those in favor then? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Okay, thank you, Councillor, and thank you, Lions, for your service to our community. Okay, so returning to the agenda here. Oops. Okay, so that brings us into our public question and comment period, item 6. So this portion here is reserved to any item on tonight's agenda with the exception of the public hearing because that item is closed and had its own part. So I'd like to welcome any members of the community forward here to speak on any item on tonight's agenda. And we would just need your name and address, the agenda item you wish to speak to, and there's 2 minutes on the timer.
Chair Soule. Ellen Lewis, 5526 Sooke Road. I wanted to comment, first of all, on page 31 of your minutes, because you've got upcoming events, and on those upcoming events, Sooke Fall Fair is missing, and we've been here for 105 years, so we are missing on there. Just that should be changed. And on page 29 of your minutes as well, you authorized a budget transfer of $15,000 from the OCP to the long-term plans and studies for Lot A visioning. I'm really disappointed in that because the OCP is way overdue, and I don't think you should be taking pieces out and looking at them. I think it's a whole, and it has to be dealt with as a whole, and a consultant isn't the one that should be doing it. It's people of Sooke. And on page 151 of your the bylaw cited as the Senior Youth Center Reserve Bylaw, it says new facility in Sooke, and I think that shouldn't be there. Again, this is an OCP. It shouldn't be discussion, should be. And I don't think you should have a new facility only. That's limiting on your bylaw. And the animal control contract on page 17181, the discussion of going in-house. It worries. It talks about perhaps going in-house with the animal control contract. And I certainly hope that that isn't a possibility, because after we went in-house with our parks, we went from a budget of $200,000 to over $400,000, almost $500,000, and now we've purchased too many vehicles. And I can't believe the number of vehicles that we're purchasing. That's another problem. At new vehicles, which when they come off the lot, they lose 20% right away. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lures. Other comments from members of the public tonight?
Gale Hall, 2517 Sooke River Road. Geez, I'm a long way down there. I'm looking at 9.7 on page 5. Where you're talking about the playing field reserve fund amendment. Now that playing field reserve is connected to the previous meeting where you were talking about going in with Sea Park to design and put forward something down on the property on Sun River. I go back again. I think I did this all the other night and didn't get anywhere with it, but that property is no longer available for playing fields. It's been rezoned, and it's rezoned to community facilities under the zoning bylaw and community residential under the OCP. The bylaws have all been done. I've got copies of them here. All done, and there's 3 or 4 different agreements on that property, and the one that I happen to have in front of me has got the statement in there. The previously proposed playing fields are no longer a part of this land agreement, Now, the agreement is between Sooke and Sun River, and in there it says you don't do that on that property anymore. So you're moving ahead with it because you've got something agreed to with Sea Park to design and do whatever with this, and we're going to turn over big bucks to them. But you can't put it on that property the way it is right now because it's been rezoned. I've got all the documents in front of me. So that business of amending the playing field reserve fund maybe should be taken out until you clarify that. I went through it all with Mr. I'm sorry, I've lost his name. With Brent, anyway. And he had it all down and everything, but here it is here. And it shouldn't be here because the property has been rezoned. And I've got all of the documents. So I think you need to take a look at that because these are agreements. They're not something that Sooke can change on its own. It's an agreement with Sun River. There's a yellow one and a blue one and a white one and all sorts of agreements, and it's in there. So I don't see how you can go ahead with a playing field down there when the land has been rezoned.
Okay, we'll check that when we come to that. Thank you, Ms. Hall. There is a lever on the chair. They were all quite
I'm a little
short
low tonight.
Today.
Vanishing.
So, feel free to adjust it.
Okay.
If you
Thank
like,
you,
to be
Mayor
more
Tait.
comfortable.
Jeff Bateman, 7083 Briarwood Place. Item 9.1 on the agenda, Silver Streak Boats and Burnside House. Wonderful that they're going to retain Burnside House in its effective condition. Hopefully we can now begin to look at, Councillor Parkinson brought up the idea of a heritage bylaw for Sooke at one point a couple of years ago, I think. And Burnside House is not the only property in Sooke that might deserve some formal protection as opposed to the largesse of the owners of the land. With the SPA committee, 10.1, this tourism kiosk project sounds great. Another public bulletin board in town. I put up a lot of posters, and there's a lack of them, so that would be highly valued. Also, the painted crosswalks will add some color and personality to the town center, so thank you for that. 10.2, animal control services. It would be good to see if we would do some research on the pros and cons, because I think that there are more potential pros to having a contracted service here in the community. I understand the CRD sends out its bylaw officer twice a week as opposed to a more regular service, and that dogs that are picked up and cats are taken away to Elk Lake. We could potentially have a local facility. And I know for a fact that there's at least one person in town with a lot of experience in animal control services who does live here. So we could explore that. Unfortunately, September 30th, the decision date is but 50 days away. So perhaps it needs to be renewed for 5 years and then investigate in the interim. Finally, this 10.6, municipal and regional district tax. It's certainly time for Sooke to step into the 21st century and have its own destination tourism marketing operation. We are one of the very few communities on the island, at any rate, and in BC, I think, that lacks this. There are regional, and it's time. And finally, 10.10, yes to roadside maintenance. I'm speaking as the president of the EMCS Society, that stretch along Edward Milne Road and the Welcome to Sooke sign. It's certainly, we'd like to see that, the contract continue to keep that. Particularly now that we've finally cracked down on the eyesore at the corner of, I think it's Charters and Sooke Road, where there were trash bags, drywall, and at least one outdated election campaign sign that dates back to perhaps as early as 2008 that was sitting there. So thank you to the bylaw enforcement officers who've cracked down on that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Bateman. Any other comments from members of the public this evening?
Hi, my name is Gregory Verano. I live at 1056951 Aaronwood Drive, and it's on agenda item 1010, a landscape maintenance of Edward Mine Frontage Road and Boulevard and the Welcome Sooke Gateway and Highway 14 Phillips Road sign, that it be maintained and properly landscaped because it's our identity when people come into our district, and it should look beautiful. It is a beautiful place where we live, and we shouldn't let that go on the wayside. It's who we are, and we want to make sure that people that come here are welcomed and feel comfortable and enjoy the beauty as soon as they enter our district. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Verano. Any other speakers on tonight's agenda?
My name's Peter Brennan. I represent the strata lot owners at 1976-1986 Glen Idle Road. I'm here on behalf lobbying for them for item 10.5 on the agenda with the sewer installation. There's a number of points that I was asked to discuss on this. The age of the septic fields on the properties at that in the peninsula there south of Sooke Road, they're coming up on replacement, and there seems to be a kind of a push on the two of them meeting together, the sewer installation or a septic replacement. And the property I represent, they are afraid that they may have to make both without this going in place, replacing their septic field at extreme cost and then paying large cost to hook up to the municipal sewer. And they apparently they have no incentive to pay for both. Yes. And the owners wish to have council consider prioritizing the connection down Kiltassan Road, Idlemore, and Glen Idle Road in accordance with the 2010-2013 Provincial Waste Management Plan. And the owners are also wishing to have council demand from Highways a response to their reluctance to install the main sewer line across the Sooke Road at the Sooke Road Bridge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And last call, or maybe not last call, but any more members of the public? Any first-time speakers, Ms. Lures? Come on up. Not seeing anyone else.
Thank you. Not enough time to go through the whole thing. Ellen Lures, 5526 Road. On page 227, the discussion there about where the signage is, Highways owns that property, correct? That's Highways property, all of that. And so that's under their contract to maintain that. So are they being paid to maintain that? And then as well, we're asked to pay another $4,500 from our district staff to look after that. That's a question, because that's $4,500, a lot of money to maintain that. And I know that the previous contractor that we had, a private contractor, did that for virtually nothing. And since now that we've gone in-house, it's costing us a lot more. I'd just let you know that. But if Highways if it's under contract with Highways, that should be part of the negotiations with Highways to see as well if they would maintain it. Of course, they'd like to give it up because to our expectations, it doesn't fit. so we could ask that. I think that has to be discussed. And on page 249 of the Sea Park Selects Concept Design for Leisure Complex, I was quite disappointed to see that this is happening, because I understand that there was the local people who have their own private fitness places were really upset about this. And were they consulted? And where do they stand on this? I mean, we're impacting private business. They're paying taxes. Sea Park is going backwards, has been for years, and it's costing us taxes. So now here we are taking away perhaps somebody's business that's paying taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lures. And anything else from anyone?
My name is Lorraine Polivsky-Love, and I'm at 1016671 Horn Road. And I'm in the process of purchasing a property on Kaltassin, and I wish to support Peter Brennan's suggestion. I wasn't aware of that there was going to be a sewer at some point put in, and I'd like to check into it, but I'd like to throw my support behind his suggestion about prioritizing that issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I missed your name.
It's Lorraine.
Lorraine?
Last name is Pawlivsky, -Love, LOVE.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think that covers off anyone that wishes to speak at this time. Okay, so we'll move into the balance of the agenda. Okay, so first item up here under our public input meetings and related reports is we have 8.1, bylaw number 657, road closure and dedication removal, here for adoption. Move adoption by Councillor Berger, seconded by Councillor Pearson. Any comments or questions? Councillor Casper?
I just noted here on the agenda, it says public input, then it says consideration of adoption.
Excuse me, Your Worship. Yes, that item is for public input.
Okay, so there
as is the financial plan following. So.
Okay, thank you for catching that, Councillor Casper. So there is public input, and then we can move to adoption. Okay, so can we table that motion till after public input? Okay. So public, is there any members of the public here to speak on the road closure and dedication removal of Soule Road? It's bylaw number 657. Call for a second time. It's not a public hearing, so I don't have a statement. It's just public input. Third and final time, anyone? Okay. So we have the motion moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so the next one then is item... Sorry, I think that is a fire alarm call? Or from the fire department? No? I don't know. That's weird. Okay. Bylaw number 716, this is the 5-year financial plan amendment. There was the comments made from Ms. Hall about the piece on the zoning. Can staff maybe clarify that for us or address that concern that was raised there? There is no agreement or anything in place with Sea Park. It was just to start that conversation. So when that matter comes forward, it'll come at a future date. But do we need to resolve something before we adopt this? In regards to the zoning?
So, excuse me, Your Worship. I believe that is a different bylaw. This is the amendment bylaw that got 3 readings
I'm sorry.
previously to transfer funding for the Transportation Master Plan and the Parks and Trails Master Plan and
Got it.
the Sooke River Roads drainage.
Okay, my apologies, I wrote my note in the wrong section, that's under 9.5. So maybe if staff can hold on to that question until we get to that, we'll work on this one now. Gee, I'm really out of order. Okay, public input, please, on the 5-year financial plan amendment. Is there any public input on this matter? We did hear from Ms. Lures in the public input part. She shared some of her concerns about it. Are there any others? Seeing none. Okay, so I'll revert to council then, and there is a recommendation that council adopt the bylaws cited as 5-year financial plan amendment, bylaw 716-6971-2018. Move adoption by Councillor Loggins, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Any comments or questions? See none. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay. In our bylaw section here, we have a zoning amendment bylaw for 1890 Maple Avenue, and I'll turn this over to staff, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The district has received an application to amend the zoning of 1890 Maple Avenue from general commercial, or C2, to service commercial, C3, for the purposes of expanding Silver Streak Boats Limited, a local business that has been in operation for 31 years. The site context: the subject property is directly adjacent to the existing Silver Streak Boats Limited, which is located at 6864 West Coast Road, which has service commercial C3 zoning and is owned by the applicant. Other zones in the surrounding area include large lot residential R1, general commercial C2, and service commercial C3. The subject property is within the community residential land use designation and is in close proximity to the Sooke Government Wharf and several businesses. This collection of businesses and commercial properties may be considered as a commercial or highway commercial node in future planning documents. The proposed rezoning meets several aspects of the economic development section in the official community plan. In addition, local employment allows for more people to live and work in Sooke and reduces the demand on major transportation routes and overall vehicle usage. The subject property is home to Burnside House, which was occupied the site for 134 years. The Burnside House does not have historic designation under the Heritage Conservation Act, but it does have historical value to the people of Sooke. The applicant has decided to retain the building on the site and convert it to an office space in the southwest corner of the property. Staff supports this application as it meets several aspects of the official community plan, and the rezoning of this property is for the purposes of expanding a local business. Engineering and planning staff are going to the site this Thursday to discuss the installation of a sidewalk versus cash in lieu along Maple Avenue, and that decision will be reached hopefully that day, and a supplemental report will be provided to council at the time of public hearing and third reading. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It seems fairly straightforward. Comments or concerns or questions? Councillor Pearson.
Yes, through the chair to staff. So at the end of this property, there's going to be two separate properties, both zone C3 commercials, so they'll remain on separate titles?
Yes, and so that's up to the applicant if they in the future wanted to dissolve interior lot lines, but right now we're looking at two separate titles with the C3 commercial zoning.
Okay. So my questions, a couple of questions. So if they had decided to dissolve the lot line now, what's the process in planning for upgrading or changing the zoning from one to another? Is it the same process?
Through your worship, it would be the same process.
Okay. I had an opportunity to walk the property this afternoon and look at, and I've got to say that the applicant is doing a fantastic job of trying to protect the heritage of that home and maintaining the neighborhood as well. The only thing I'm not clear about is that sidewalk. I would strongly recommend that we leave that sort of till the very end, like the negotiation, like as long as we could secure the funds. I'm not sure it's going to be a great place for a sidewalk. We already have one 50-foot sidewalk up Maple Avenue that goes from nowhere to nowhere. So although it is going to be near an intersection there, I would strongly suggest that that we secure the funds and then if it suits the future. So that would be my only statements. But anyways, it's a good project, and the applicant's here tonight and is doing a good job. So thank you.
Councillor Loggins.
Thank you. I had similar thoughts about the sidewalk on Maple, and I know that Councillor Pearson has mentioned sidewalks in that area for a very long time, but along West Coast Road, and I do agree that it would be better suited along there if possible, so we can start making those connections back to the town center, since we have residential developments happening across the street as well as other commercial and walkable organizations along that area. So that would be, I think, a little bit better suited along the West Coast Road portion.
Through your worship, just to comment, we can only look at the subject property, which is not on West Coast Road, for the sidewalk discussion. A small portion, maybe.
Yeah. Okay, this is where you'll be meeting with the applicant on site later this week, and we'll come back with something for council, okay? Other comments or questions from members of council? Okay, so there is a recommendation here, and that is that council give first and second reading to zoning amendment bylaw number 713, 600-61, 2018, to amend the zoning of 1890 Maple Avenue from general commercial C2 to service commercial C3. Moved by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor Berger. Questions on the motion? We've moved first and second together this time, just so everyone's clear that we did that. Anything further? All those in favor? Opposed? Is carried unanimously. And then the other part is that a public hearing be scheduled for zoning amendment bylaw number 713, 600-61, 2018, in accordance with section 466 of the Local Government Act. Moved by Councillor Loggins and seconded by Councillor Parkinson. And this will be at the next regular meeting in September, or when would that be?
I believe this one is scheduled for the special meeting on September 17th.
September 17th, okay, and that will be the next time that council is sitting, so we have that meeting. Okay, good. All those in favor? Opposed? Is carried unanimously. Okay, thank you. And okay, so 9.2, we have 7044 Maple Park Terrace and 7002 Brailsford Place, and that is that council adopt the bylaw cited as zoning amendment bylaw number 694, 600-53, 2018. Move adoption by Councillor Berger and seconded by Councillor Pearson. It's a question. In this case, council had moved that all those covenants and the like be registered at development, subdivision, or whatever stage rather than at adoption. So is that process moving?
Yeah, yes, it is. It's for development permit stage, and they have been, I believe, agreed upon by staff and the applicant, and they are expecting registration within the next few days, as I understand it.
Okay, good. All right. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Oh, are you opposed, Councillor Pearson?
No. I just comment about that.
Okay.
So, because the applicants, I think they're here tonight as well. So, is this now? Everything is done with this property. The DP is in place. Everything is in place, because I think that's my understanding of our last meeting is that the adoption tonight that the DP is in place, because we talked about form and character, and if I remember our chief planner talking about that form and character didn't apply to this property. So is that kind of I want to make sure that that's true, because I was met with the people on Brailsford and they want this project to be moving along forthwith, so I want to make sure that
it doesn't came to council. We delegated that authority to staff.
Good.
And so in this case, there's nothing further that'll return to council. I just asked that question because we didn't follow our normal process, so I didn't want to see us come up with something that then had to have it come back to council, because we didn't follow the staff recommendation in that case. But it seems like everything is rolling on as it should, and so once those things get registered, and then all of the rest is up to staff. It doesn't come back to council for any other matter. Is there anything further to add?
Through your worship, that's correct. There is a development permit that has been submitted, and we're working on that now, and then there will be subdivision to follow.
Yeah, so previous development permits return to council, but we have delegated that authority to staff, so they'll work through that and it won't come to council.
So
otherwise, that would be on the 19th had we not done so.
No, we don't want it till the 19th. No, my question is around the form and character piece that we specifically talked about. I want to make sure that that's not coming back, or that it's not going to be holding up the DP.
Through your worship, so they are required to submit a development permit for single-family subdivision, anything over 4 lots, according to the OCP. So they have done so, and we are reviewing it based on form and character and environmental.
Form and character outside of our town core?
That's right.
But I'm confused because I don't think that our OCP has form and character outside of the town core.
So our OCP, as it's written now, requires a development permit for forming character for anything over 4 lots of subdivision, whether it's in the town center or not.
You may remember with Woodland Creek, when that item came forward for that phase, we talked about that at development permit phase following the zoning. And then recommendations came forward from the land use committee to have this delegated back to staff because we were bogging down our agenda with several items that can be resolved by staff. Shada?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to mention perhaps the confusion may be around the delegation of the development permits to our director or head of planning, in that the development permits within the town center still come back to council. Yes. And so that's the difference. DPs in the town center come to council. DPs outside the town center are approved by our head of planning.
And I think commercial will also come back to council regardless of where it is, yes. Right? Commercial, institutional, and the like. So in this case, it's this piece that's moved. Okay?
I just want to make sure that at the end of tonight's meeting that I got assurances that, because the people of Brailsford, I met with them and they want this project to keep moving along, and so I want to make sure that everything is done within our power to make sure that this project is moving along. So thank you. And done correctly. Yes. Thank you, Councillor Parkinson.
Yes. Through Your Worship, the application's been submitted. We're processing it in the standard procedures that we follow. In fact, it's a fairly simple DP, and it's in the referral process right now in terms of status update.
Okay. Okay, moving on. Councillor Casper.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on this because there appears to be a bit of a conflict or contradiction in the community plan and the process. And I'm not laying blame against anyone who works for the district or any council. It clearly is a requirement that a standard, a design standard, form and character standard, has to be adopted by council before any of those policies within the official community plan can be applied. And the only form and character policy or provision or plan that we've adopted is for the town center, for all structures.
Okay.
And no, I'm speaking to the matter that was raised by Councillor Pearson. And I just think that it's critical that we don't stray outside what we're actually legally allowed to do. And I've had a serious concern about this for a number of years. I've actually done some research going back to 2012 when it was pointed out at that time, when we did have an official Land Use and Environment Committee, that there was a duplication of requirements, development permits on subdivisions, overlapping our subdivision and development standards bylaw, which lays out all of the form and character of a subdivision, how the roads are built, how the curbs are laid out, the widths of the roads, the widths of the sidewalks, the types of lighting, and all of those standards that are applicable. And I think what Councillor Pearson raised is that why are these additional processes being implemented over and above what we already have in another bylaw, which is then going to be adhered to. So, I just, it all boils down to what I've been saying for a number of years, and that is that we have a little bit too much red tape, we got a little bit too much rules that really provide nothing for the community. And when we've heard from this applicant in regard to this subdivision, these lots are going to be for sale to the open market, and I don't know how anybody can apply form and character for this subdivision. So does that mean that the applicant has to come in with a rubber-stamped blueprint of what types of houses are going to be built there? I don't think so.
We're talking about a zone, and at the last meeting there was concerns at the public hearing that we had talked about the dust and the noise and rather on the zone. So in this case, I would recommend that either yourself or Councillor Pearson put forward a notice of motion if you have something that you would like to see changed or amended. But we have, with other developments around the community, gone through this process in the past. And now, instead of having it come back to council, in this case, which would not be until September for development permit, it'll be resolved from staff. We hear that the applicant has submitted all the pieces that they need to. Staff are working on it, and we'll go through it. And I'm having trouble following the both of you because, as Councillor Logan said, it's not on tonight's agenda, and we want to adopt it. So I think we should do that, and we should move on to the rest of the items in the agenda. And feel free to bring something forward if you see a way to improve on the process or make a recommendation to the Development and Land Use Committee that are working diligently on this matter every 2 weeks. Okay, so the next one is, let's see, 701. This here is also here for adoption, and that is that Council adopt the bylaw cited as Sooke Sewer Specified Area Amendment Bylaw 701-147-35, 2018. Moved by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor Berger. Any discussion related to adoption on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. And we have here zoning amendment bylaw 708 for 6868 Beaton Road. Would someone like to move adoption on Beaton Road? Moved by Councillor Berger and seconded by Councillor Loggins. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. And then this is the one where there's the zoning question. So this is the one that was raised earlier in the public input on, okay, Sun River Way. No, it isn't. My goodness, okay. I just really want to get that question answered. Okay. This is for the text amendments that have come. Councillor Berger would need to step out for
Yes,
this
thank
one.
you. I have to declare conflict as our company is a subcontractor for Cedar Construction, who is the general contractor for Sun River Estates.
Okay, so this is zoning amendment bylaw 711, 600-60, 2330 Sun River Way, and 2398 Shambrook Drive. Here for adoption. Move adoption by Councillor Loggins and seconded by Councillor Pearson. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Is Councillor Berger that far? Okay, welcome back. Okay, next we have the Seniors Youth Center Reserve Bylaw 717, and this here is also for adoption. Moved by Councillor Casper and seconded by Councillor Pearson, although Councillor Berger.
Yes, thank you. I, too, have a question further to what Ms. Lewers raised earlier. Number 5 of the bylaw does state that, funds and interest earned on this must be used only for capital design and construction costs related to new facility in Sooke that will accommodate both seniors and youth activities. I believe when we did the plebiscite question, it also talked about refurbishment of existing buildings, so it's already been moved and seconded, but I'd like to strike number 5.
Okay, so part of this discussion, though, was about the Lot A in specific and for the transfer of the reserve funds to be used specifically on that project. So that's why I think the language is the way it is.
I agree with you, but there's nothing saying that this is Lot A here.
Does it need to be tied to an address? Like the intent was with the letter of intent and all of that. Councillor Loggins?
We did talk about extending this beyond any use of the funds for the senior center that we agreed to in principle that might be on Lot A. So I think I agree with Councillor Berger of striking this, or at least striking new facility, since this may be an ongoing fund that we can use for other facilities.
Okay. Councillor Casper, then Parkinson.
Well, it was also discussed that there had already been a commitment made to the seniors organization by this council, approval in principle on utilization of Lot A. They've given us a number of updates of a potential partnership with an affordable housing entity, and it was their view that the $250,000 in the existing reserve fund would then go to that project at that Lot A. That's why this all came about, and nothing else.
Okay, there's Councillor Parkinson, then I'll go back to Councillor Berger and Loggins.
So through your worship, for number 5, I would suggest that we just strike the new out of it and leave it as is.
We did that, though, seeing that this has gone through first, second, all the readings. At this point, like, what happens process-wise? Ms. Machado?
Yes, I would recommend that third reading be rescinded and that third reading be given with the revised wording, and then we will have to schedule final in the September 17th meeting.
Okay, it's a bit of a concern to me, just given the timing that the other groups are working towards and their process that they've reported out to us to date. Councillor Berger, then Loggins.
Yes, thank you. And while I can appreciate the fact that we have an agreement in principle, if a contract or agreement with another outside agency doesn't come to fruition, then we've handcuffed this funds that was intended for either a new facility or refurbishment of existing facility. So I would move to rescind.
Okay, is there a seconder to rescind? It's seconded by Councillor Loggins to rescind third reading. So anything further on rescinding third? Councillor Loggins?
I just want to appease Councillor Casper by saying that this has nothing to do with the $250K that we have agreed to in principle to the Lot A and seniors group. It's looking out for this fund going forward.
Councillor Casper.
Well, I would just hope that that's reflected in the public record, that this is for any future funds that may be allocated to this particular fund.
Anything further on rescinding third? All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Casper and myself are opposed to rescinding third. The motion carries. And now I'm looking for a motion then to move third with the amendment in the text. Right?
That's correct. Can I just clarify that it's to strike the word new?
Right. So let's be clear here. Then it's related to a facility in Sooke that will accommodate both seniors and youth activities. So that word has been struck. Okay. So is someone prepared to make that move? Okay. So third reading as amended then, moved by Councillor Loggins and seconded by Councillor Parkinson. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Casper and myself are opposed to that. And so at this point then, this will be coming forward again in September 17th. But there would be no need for a public hearing at that point?
That's correct. Sorry, that's correct. We've already had, this one doesn't get public input, so
okay,
it's just scheduled for adoption.
So it'll just come for adoption. Okay. All right. Okay, 9.7 Plain Field Reserve Fund Amendment Bylaw. So this is where there was the question about doing this piece as opposed to, and then of course with the zoning on the land and the concerns raised forward by a member of the public about the use and the zoning on those lands and the agreement. Is there any comment back on that?
Through your worship, the only thing I can comment on that I have access to the information is the report that came forward with the original bylaw speaks to 3.5D of the Sun River Agreement, which notes that the funds are for the planning, design, and construction of the district lands which were received as part of the agreement. So I'm not sure what Ms. Hall has, but certainly if she could share that with me, I could review that. I won't be able to do that, of course, for tonight's meeting, but we could postpone consideration of this bylaw to, again, the September 17th meeting so that we're clear that there's no conflicts.
Okay, so that would be an option then, Council. You could either move it now or receive more information and have it in September. Councillor Berger, then Loggins.
Yes, I too would like to find out what's going on with zoning, but as I'm reading through the bylaw, again, this one isn't site specific. The other one didn't say lot A and this one doesn't say land. This is just talk about the funds and the bylaw. I mean, we know that they're hand in hand, but it doesn't say in here that it's site specific to any parcel of land. It just says add the word design to construction and design of new playing fields, and add section 6, the definition of playing field, which means any area used to play sports. So I think we can go ahead without it's not site-specific, but I would like the answer, so I guess I'll look to my colleagues for suggestions.
I tend to agree with you there. It was just when council looked at taking this funds and using it in another area of Sooke, it came back that was not, we were unable to do that those particular funds must be spent only on this particular parcel within Sun River. So when council looked at allocating the funds to the new turf field project, we were unable to do that. So that's why it sits specifically with this land and only to be used specifically for this purpose. So that's why the definition needed to be tightened up for that particular purpose. So although it wasn't here, because when we first did that, that's what we're like, oh, well, we'll just dish it over there, and we couldn't do that. Councillor Casper.
Well, I was under the impression that we were tightening up an existing fund and establishing a legal framework to utilize that money in a way that was the original intent, and that was to have the dollars spent on a field use or area. And it should be noted, once this is approved, or if it does get approved, then it would have to come back to council to even withdraw the money out of the fund in the first place. So council is going to then have another kick at the cat as to whether or not the money is going to be spent anywhere.
Yeah. Maybe a ball instead of a cat. It's playing field.
Yeah. It still comes back. So.
It does. So I think it's the case is maybe we can get a follow-up report just outlining the zoning and what we would need to do. We can progress with this and adopt the bylaw and then look for a follow-up report just to address those questions at that time. Okay, so I'm looking for a motion then to adopt the bylaw. Moved by Councillor Casper, seconded by Councillor Berger. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried unanimously. And then second, that council direct staff to prepare a report on zoning and use of these lands at an upcoming meeting. Moved by Councillor Casper and seconded by Councillor Loggins. All those in favor of the report? Opposed? It's also carried unanimously. Okay, thank you. And 9.8, we have a 5-year financial plan amendment bylaw for the fire tender vehicle for MFA borrowing here. We've had reports on this previously, so now here is this item from staff coming forward here. And the recommendation is that the Council of the District of Sooke authorize up to $425,000 be borrowed under Section 175 of the Community Charter from the Municipal Finance Authority for the purpose of purchasing a new water tender truck for the fire department, and the loan be repaid within 5 years with no right of renewal.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Parkinson, seconded by Councillor Loggins. Is there a comment from staff, please?
I just wanted to let you know the fire chief's on his way up if anybody has any questions. My apologies. I was supposed to text him and got caught up in business and missed my opportunity. So
okay. He has reported on this before, but I appreciate that he's coming up here. So
he's right there.
Okay. Looks like Mr. Howitt. Okay, does council have questions for the chief? No. Okay, so I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. And then the second part here is that council give first, second, and third reading to the bylaw cited as 5-year financial plan amendment, bylaw 719, 69702, 2018. Moved by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor Loggins. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Nice to see you. See you next time, perhaps. Okay, very good. Okay, so reports requiring action. Our next item are a series of recommendations that come from our Sooke Program of the Arts Committee. So I'd like to thank the committee members for all the work and the meetings that you've attended to. Councillor Parkinson chairs this meeting, but I understand that your public members will be presenting. Okay. Feel free to come forward, gentlemen, and if you could please turn on the microphone for us. And maybe just give us a brief introduction.
Hi, my name is Gregory Verano, and I was appointed this year to the SPA, and I'm proud to be part of this great little organization to make our community a beautiful place and the envy of other communities hopefully soon.
Peter Jonason, 2155 Winfield Place.
We'll start with the first item, which will be the memorial bench and memorial sculpture at Whiffenspit. Whiffenspit's our #1 tourist destination. And now we have some of the benches that are starting to deteriorate, and it's over time and erosion from the elements. We were looking for an alternative way to have the same message that the public wants to display, but in a lot better way. And we were thinking of the stones. Sarah, if you can flip through one more. Yes. To replace the benches that are deteriorating, we have 25 right now, and we get 10 to 12 calls a year for a bench. And there's 12 people on a waiting list. That'd be a lot of benches on the Whiffenspit and other parks. The number of benches we have right now are 25, and of that, there's a stipulation that they're to remain there for 10 years. 24 of them are already surpassed the 10 years, and just one's left that is still in that timeline. Proposing a stone of this caliber, and it will be placed on near the Quinter Bay Park, but it will be facing the Sooke side of the Whiffenspit and not the Olympic mountain range, because it should be, Sooke, our home, facing Canada. The stone that we're proposing, if you could flip through the one more, the large one, that one there, right there, which is in Nova Scotia, is to actually have an opening in it where they can actually look through the stone and see our basin, which I think would be really, really beautiful. And if you can take it from there.
What we're hoping to do is that when the benches expire, that the plaques that are on the benches then now get placed onto the stone. And any further persons that want to have a memorial plaque, it goes onto the stone. Is that it?
Yeah. Now the cost of the benches was $2,000. The plaques, we want to put a cost of $500 to it. It's not that that's what the plaque actually costs to manufacture, but you want to put a little weight to it to signify the importance of what you're doing, to who you, the names you're putting on there. Now the plaques will all be the same size, same type, so they'll take up the same amount of space, and it'll work in the same timeline. It'll be there for 10 years, and after that, you have the option of taking your plaque home. If we were, the people that have plaques on the benches and that expires, they have the opportunity to moving that plaque onto the stone, because we have a lot of people that once the 10 years is up want to extend it, but the benches aren't going to survive because they're deteriorating, so it would be better to move that plaque onto the stone.
Take it from there. I think we're good there. We would like to recommend that the staff come up with a memorial bench and memorial sculpture policy. And as Greg mentioned, that existing memorial bench holders, upon expiry of their term, be added to the wait list should they wish to renew. And that council requests staff to send out a request for proposal to have a memorial sculpture created and installed in the Whiffenspit.
Give me 1 sec here. Yeah, now the locations, we've picked one location that we just mentioned, but we have alternate locations in case we need to have another stone. We don't know really how what the timeline would be for that, But in case there is years going forward, we've allocated different points on the spit where we can add an additional stone rather than have it side by side and make it into a memorial park. We want to still keep the feel and the atmosphere of the spit as the spit, but we also want to give residents and local residents the opportunity to put in memory loved ones' names. Yeah, we're going to ask if you can pass these items as we talk about them, just to speed up the process a bit, and so we get some confirmation and we can move forward with the decision.
Okay, so that was, I was wondering about that for council. Does council wish to hear the presentation first and then go back and do them, or would you prefer to do them one at a time? Councillor Casper?
Well, I think for their benefit and ours, because who knows how long the discussion is going to be on this matter, that we get the entire presentation, and then we can deal with these items individually after your presentation. Because, I can't assume how long it's going to take to discuss this, and I don't want to tie up your time. We've got a lot of business here.
Yep. So, gentlemen, if you could move, thank you very much for that first item, and then if we could move on to the next ones, then we'll return. Thank you.
Our next item is the Spirit Bear project at the Sooke Region Museum. The Spirit Bear project was a joint project between the Sooke District of Sooke and the Sooke Lions Club in 2007. The two artists who created the artwork have been contacted and asked to restore the Spirit Bear. The painting has faded and the mosaic pieces are missing. We just want to see that renewed and brought back to life. The committee shall be presenting to the Lions Club once we hear back on the cost from the artists. We would like to have this project completed in the next month or two. As this is a joint project, costs should be shared by both the SPA committee and the Lions Club. The recommendation is that council authorize the SPA committee to spend no more than $500 on the restoration of the Spirit Bear.
Okay, the next item will be the transit stop shelters at the locations of West Coast Road and Sooke Road and Phillips Road, and Sooke Road and Caddison Road. What we want to do is propose artwork to be placed on these bus stops, bus shelters, just like they are on the main strip. However, the catch on this one will be there'll be photographs, and it will tie it in with BYLAWS Sooke. Because we're trying to get more of a wildlife type of presentation, and tying it in with BYLAWS Sooke will help manifest that. Now, we want local photographers to have the opportunity to present their work there, and it would be for a period of 6 months. And for an honorarium for each artist or one artist of $250 for a total of $750. We recommend that the council and SPA committee send out a call to artists for the Transit Stop Shelters photography project. The council authorized the expenditure of the amount of money we talked about, $250 per photograph, selected 3 total.
Our next project is we have a tourism kiosk project. The committee is looking at putting up a notice board similar to the Metropoles to display events happening in the district of Sooke. We want to do this just in front of Western Foods where those signs are. And our recommendation is that council authorize the SPA committee to use the kiosk poles to create an area for local event signage. And our last?
We have a 5th project, which is the crosswalk project, and location in Sooke Road by the CIBC and the roundabouts. The committee would like to let the council know that we are working on a project for the crosswalks that would appreciate, and we would appreciate their suggestions. The ideas for the crosswalks are, as they're presented there on the screen, by the CIBC musical notes, the roundabout, a whale tail and a salmon, and a rainbow flag. Now, the rainbow flag will manifest as intertwining every culture together, just like the Olympic logo does. And the colors and the scheme that you see placed on there is not what it's going to be. We're going to actually change that up. We just put that there to have some artwork just to show you. I mean, that's it. Yeah. And a recommendation. Excuse me. The council recommendation is the council to receive the SPA committee report for this and information on this. We're working on it right now with the roads and stuff to find out how to facilitate this, but there'll be more information coming. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen, for the presentation. And if you're able to stick around, if we have any follow-up questions, that would be great. But otherwise, feel free to have a seat. Councillor Casper, do you have something?
Yeah, I just. Can I ask questions now while they're there?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So on the last item there, so you're going to be having discussions with the Ministry of Transportation and Highways because it's actually their road?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
and find out what standards?
Yeah, the standards are exactly exact. So once we get more information, we'll pass that along.
Okay. And I guess my last question is in regard to item number 4, and that was the kiosk.
Yes.
So where would this be located? Or, where
Well, you see on the kiosk now, they're the one side where the maps are. It would be on the opposite side where we would have it. So when people walk into it, they'll have the map on one side. On the other side will be the information board. And it's near the bus stop, so it'll be highly used, we think. Just standing there the other day, I just was counting how many people actually go through there, and that would be the most advantageous place to place them. Now, we're thinking of also some type of shape, too, to attract people, maybe the shape of a crab, maybe the shape of a whale tail. We're looking at those type of alternatives, but I think we do need it, and we can also title, Sooke community events on the opposite side, so people walking towards it will know exactly what it is.
So it's sort of going to fit in that
both,
open area?
On both sides on the existing poles. It'll just be attached to that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Was that it, Councillor Cass? That's good. Okay, Councillor Pearson.
Good work. Thank you for your presentation. That's some really cool ideas mixed in here. I got tick marks beside everything that's there. I particularly like the coming back to the memorial bench policy, and I think that you've got some good foundations and some good ideas in there. It was, as you know, there was some discussion about that previous. I like the idea of the rock with the hole through it, like looking down the harbor. I think that's really sharp. So there's some cool ideas here. So thank you for these ideas. Good stuff. Thank you. That's all my comments.
Okay, Councillor Loggins.
Thank you to you and your group for the work that you've done, and to Councillor Parkinson for the work she's done on this as well. I do have one question about the crosswalks, which I know you probably can't answer now, but to take to your meeting with the ministry would be if these can be placed in an intersection with no lights. I'm just concerned that there's no other, standard way of letting people know there's a crosswalk except for those signs, which we've had several complaints that they're not as visible as they probably should be in that particular area. But I really hope that we can put them somewhere, if not there. And then I too have tick marks on all of these things. I think it's really great how much work has been put forward, and I agree with it all. One question I have, actually one request I guess I would have was for staff for the, if we do pass the motion to draft a memorial bench and memorial sculpture policy, I'm curious to know how many plaques we might be able to fit on a rock of that size, especially with the hole in the middle. That was one that Councillor Parkinson and I saw in Halifax, and it was really beautiful, and she did mention it would be the perfect spot for the spit, and I completely agree. I'm just curious how many might go on it, and also what the cost of removing the stones might be, because I know you discussed the importance of having it kind of be like move it from the bench to the stone and then potentially either renew or take it home. So if there is that process, just a better understanding of what the costs are involved. And then one question I have for your committee is regarding the transit shelters. You mentioned that they would only have the photographs in them for 6 months. What would happen after that 6 months?
It would be another request for an artist to submit.
Okay, so so every 6 months, your committee will ask for funds.
Yes.
Okay. Maybe ask for double for the year or something, because it's just harder to, do it in 6-month pieces when we're working with a budget that we can look at more regularly. But
we chose 6, but we can easily expand or change.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure that will all be sorted. And the 6 months isn't in the recommendation, so in the motion, so that's fine. I think it's something that can be worked on later, but thank you very much for all your work.
Okay, for the I'll start with the crosswalks. Yeah, we're looking at what the City of Victoria did with their painted crosswalks, and we're taking the pluses and the minuses from there and moving forward. So once we get more information, we'll pass that along. In regards to the 6 months, we're trying to get as many artists exposure as possible locally. I think that'll enrich the art community, and it's important because Sooke has a lot of artists per capita compared to other districts. So the more exposure we give them, the better, and especially for photographers. I myself being one, but I will not participate in this, but to give them a chance to express their views, because a lot of the works, a lot of the work done right now that's on with wraps on transmission poles and stuff like that, they're all paintings. There's not much photography, and we want to give them an opportunity. It is a limited place that's 3 places, but rotating them twice a year, we'll have more photographers show their work. Tying in with BYLAWS is great because it's going to bring awareness to wildlife here. I mean, bears, cougars, we live with that every day. I mean, deer crossing, and tying it in with BYLAWS. If anyone knows what BYLAWS really does, I have it written down here.
We do. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, and actually,
it'll
I'll
really help. I'll bring awareness and educate people on how to live, coexist.
Yeah, and one of the things that my organization has done actually just a couple of weeks ago is we asked youth to do a very similar thing, but discuss through a photograph what Sooke means to them. And we got tons of responses as well, so perhaps you could work with a youth engagement group of some sort as well to get a variety of applicants there. And then another way that you could possibly include a number of photographers would be to feature one image and have that as selected winner for the funds, and then also have smaller pieces of other people who submitted images as well, so you get a different variety and several different artists included. Thanks.
Councillor Berger?
Yes, thank you. Thank you guys for your work. I'll be really brief. I look forward to the creation of a new policy for the memorial and commemorative statues or benches or plaques or whatever it is that is decided. I think that'll be a public process that our community will look forward to. I wanted to say with the sidewalk painting, I'm glad you brought up Victoria because I noticed that theirs are sort of gone and faded and we can learn from them. But I also spent a week in Sicamous, BC, and they have a new roundabout there. If you Google their roundabout, they've done some beautiful things with almost exactly what you've got here, but it's sort of with a metal art around, but just for an idea. Thank you.
Yeah, we also looked at the Victoria one, some of the shapes, so they don't bother people's eyesight while they're driving with the cars and can actually see that it's crosswalks. So we're taking that into consideration. Public safety is, first and foremost. Thank you.
Just on the crosswalks, and it's likely as you work with given in terms of process, council would then endorse you to move ahead and work with the ministry staff on them. So they'll probably have some feedback on safety. I just look at the one with the rainbow, and my only comment, and I know you're working on this, is it would need some kind of a frame, because now that I walk with a small child, he'll follow the lines and then would likely walk in and then right into traffic following the curvature, because that's what he's looking at and that's what little kids would tend to see. So it's just, you want people just to get across the road, so that's just, but they will likely have more comment and, you know.
Yeah, we'll avoid the curvature that you see on the diagram. That was just to place something there
Yes.
for the meeting, because obviously we need something that people can follow, and we'll take that into consideration, obviously. There was another point in regards to if we run out of plaque space on the stone. That's why we've picked alternate locations for possibly a second stone. Now, the size of the stone, that all depends on once we get permission to go with this, we can find out what we can get quarried. There's a few stones that we've shown you around. There's a really large one at the new Langford Parkway, right across the YMCA, which is like hidden, but it's just epically beautiful. I'm sure if you've seen it, if you got to really look for it, but it's stunning. It's stunning, and it's huge. I mean, judging by getting the information on the requests, they're not overbearing. We're talking about 12 a year, 10 to 12 a year, and I'm pretty sure the first stone will facilitate the need. But as it grows, like I said before, we've already selected secondary locations that will keep the atmosphere and the feel of the spit as is, but give the public and local public, I'm going to add the local, the opportunity to spare their wishes and of their family names.
Yeah, thank you very much for your work on that policy, and I really appreciate your time on all of this. Okay. Oh, sorry, Councillor Parkinson.
Through your worship, I'd like to thank my council, my committee members here. There's 4 of them in the audience, and I thank you for all the work that you have done in creating all our different projects that we would like to see. I would just like to add one thing to the memorial bench and sculpture, that we did choose 3 locations for the sculpture at the entranceway into the park, and is one of the prime areas. I'd like to state that the 25 people that do have benches in the park, the ones that are expired, will all stay there until we have the sculpture in place so that they have a place to go to should they wish. People who would like, so no renewal of the benches as such, but when the 10 years has expired, they can go back onto the wait list at the back so that the other new people moving up can have a bench if they wish. And if you don't want to have a bench, you can go directly to the sculpture. And then in regards to the art projects on the bus stops, the places where the artwork goes in, there's just 2 different sizes in there. So they're not great big spots in the bus shelters. And we have always used youth in all our projects that we have done. So when we painted the boxes and things like that, we always use students from the art program at the high school. Thank you.
Okay. Over to staff, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just had a couple of questions for clarification for the purposes of staff putting together the policy should this move forward. I just wasn't sure. You stated when a bench expires, they can move the plaque over to the rock, but you didn't say if that was at the expense of the putting a plaque on the rock and whether that term expires, as would a regular plaque put on the rock?
When the term expires and they have the option of either obviously taking the bench, if it's one of the 5 that we want to remove, they have an option of taking the bench with them, taking the plaque with them, or getting the plaque mounted onto the stone. But that we're still debating whether it should be their cost or we
so
carry
not the cost of a new plaque, but maybe an.
We're trying to size the plaques to the. She put her hand up. Oh, go ahead.
So what we decided with our discussions was that once the bench has expired, you may take your plaque off the bench and take your plaque home with you. You may choose to put the plaque up on the sculpture, which we will do for the people. There is no cost for them taking it from the bench to the wall, is what we had discussed. And then you could also take your bench home with you, if you would like, with the plaque on it, at your own expense. It's written in here on the back sheet. And then the other option was that if you do not want the bench, you put your plaque up on the sculpture and the bench will be disposed of by the district.
Sorry, and my question surrounding that was, once the plaque is moved onto the sculpture, does it have a limited time it can stay there?
It's forever.
But the plaques that you purchase to put on the sculpture have a 10-year term?
No, they will stay there.
I think that's what was said, and that's what
Sorry.
confused me.
Yeah,
That's
no,
okay.
they stay there
That's
forever.
good.
There is no expiry
Okay,
date on that.
that clarifies,
Yeah.
thank you.
Pardon me?
Who's going to pay to put it on the sculpture?
Who's going
do the professional job on each sculpture?
Sorry, sir, our public comment period is over, but just keep in mind that council is receiving these recommendations and staff will draft a policy that will come back at a future meeting, and there'll be ample time. We'll need to allow plenty of time to discuss that. So this is just giving some direction to staff on how we would like the policy to look like based on recommendations from the committee. Councillor Berger, then Casper, then Parkinson, then Loggins.
Yes, thank you. And thank you again for all the work that you've done. Sorry, my intention in reading, or my thought in reading this was that the recommendation would go back to staff to compare different municipalities, look at a whole new thing. I wasn't under the impression that this verbiage was going to be exactly what the policy was to look like. And if that's the case, because we're talking retroactive, and this is the first time we've ever talked about retroactively doing something with the benches that are currently there, I'm wondering if I should be a part of this discussion, even though it's very preliminary, because I do have a family member that has a bench there. So if this is very broad, and staff is going to bring back a report coming up with numerous things, then I feel that I'm fine to make a recommendation. But if this is very site-specific, and we're going to vote to do exactly this, then I'm feeling like maybe I should leave the room. So I'll look to our acting CAO for comment.
Okay, just as before we do that, this is where I wanted to thank the gentleman and then get back into doing these one at a time, because what's happening now is council is asking questions and we're jumping through all of these items. So I'd like to focus our conversation back on one particular item at a time so we can focus our attention on one item, if that's okay with council. So that's where I think here, like just to try to provide some clarity to Councillor Berger, like we took this and we sent the policy to the SPA committee to come back with recommendations. So, and then there's basically just the 3 paragraphs, but in terms of the exact detail of the language, I wasn't expecting us to get into that conversation right now. I was sort of seeing that council staff will take the feedback from council and then we'll need to work on something probably at a committee of the whole day. I wasn't, because we don't have anything to sit here and start wordsmithing with. It's just generally what I'm looking at is, what do we think of a memorial sculpture? What do we think about the location? What size of stone and whatnot, and here are some ideas about term and what we do with some items in a general way, and then we have to have the policy come back. And given that we had a lot of discussion about this before, and I think also made some representation that those impacted by the old policy would be notified of that, we need to have a larger conversation about that. And then I think council can also think more about this, but we had been looking at a wall or something. The SPA committee is saying, don't do a wall. Let's find a beautiful rock. Let's do this. Let's do that. And I think that is sort of the general feel. What do you think about this? Because if council hates the rock, then it's not going anywhere. Then we need something else. We need to send them. But I'm hearing that we like the idea of a rock. So that's the general tone. Does that make sense? Is that good? Does that help you?
Yeah, it's very big. So it's fine.
Okay. Councillor Casper?
Yes, okay. I'll move the first recommendation, which includes the 3 first bullets, because that pertains to the memorials.
That's right.
Okay.
Correct.
So I'll make that motion.
And you're moving them all as a block?
Well, no, there's 3 lines.
Yes.
And I
so
just marked
the
it,
first
that's number
2.
1.
Okay, so the first 3 items on drafting the policy and sculpture policy, about the existing one, and then the third about the RFP. You're moving those 3 items?
Yes.
Okay. And Councillor Pearson has seconded that?
Can I speak to it?
Yes, of course.
So I just want, I think it's great that a lot of work's been done. There's a couple of things that I think have to take place. One, if it hasn't, then, or if it has, then I apologize. And that is that the 25 families or individuals that have purchased and have these benches, that there's some form of communication or consultation process that they know that this is taking place, because I think that's critical.
Oh, no, that'll happen for sure.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure that that is the case, because communication is very critical in making these types of decisions that have a huge emotional attachment. And I think all of us appreciate that.
Oh, yeah, well, that's been
Sorry,
taken into consideration.
now that we have a motion, I can't have you speaking to
Sorry.
it. It's just with council. Okay, let me just turn off.
So anyway, I was just trying to pass that on to the committee members that hopefully that will happen.
I completely agree with that.
And also, I'm comfortable with the fact in moving all three, because I know it will come back to council for further discussion as usual. So we'll leave it at that.
So my question then, and I completely agree with Councillor Casper on the consultation and the dialogue piece, though, is with the memorial sculpture, in terms of an RFP, like what sort of dollar figure are we looking at there? I mean, we're thinking something quite large, and then it would have to be properly mounted and the like, and then some form of work done to have the cutout. So it's just in terms of...
I think I'm led to believe we have about $36,000 in the Spa Arts Fund, but I think that perhaps an amendment to the third bullet there, just to say with funding to come from that account, because right now we're just asking staff to issue an RFP with kind of no parameters, no funding or anything.
Okay, so is it more appropriate to get, well, I guess requests for proposals, and then we'll see what returns and what the price tag looks like. But I think, yeah, it would need to have some framework on what the cost is. Okay, are you comfortable with that as the mover and the seconder? Good with that amendment? Okay. Anything further from council at this time? Seeing none, all those in favor then of the motion? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. So we'll look forward to another date for that. The next one is for the $500 for the restoration of the Spirit Bear. It seems fairly straightforward to me. Moved by Councillor Loggins, seconded by Councillor Pearson. And, okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. The next then is that council authorizes the Sooke Problem the Arts Committee to issue a call for artists for the Transit Stop Shelters Photography Project, and that council authorize the expenditure of $750 for the 3 photographs as selected, $250 each. Any further comments or questions on this? Someone like to move the motion? Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Loggins. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. For the next one is to use the kiosk poles for the local events signage. In terms of maintenance, like, are we expecting the spa committee volunteers to maintain this, or? Yes, because I haven't moved a motion. There's no motion. It's only when there's a live motion on the floor. Then it's with council.
We don't do this every day, so.
Yeah, no, that's all good.
We're getting up to speed.
Yeah. Because sometimes
we're still working on that. I know we leased that we leased that spot for what we have now.
Yes.
And that's one thing that we're working at. We first got to decide what we're putting up as far as, and then we'll decide what the maintenance will be. We don't know if it's going to be like an open board or we're going to close the board like under glass. We don't know that. We're working on that now, and we're actually getting quotes on designs.
Okay.
But more information will come forward, and once we get that information, then we'll have some numbers.
Okay. So when that comes back, there would probably need to be some sort of just a policy on what type of signage may be permitted. You could see it covered with election signs, for example. So it's just, I think our other sign policy restricts that, but it's just to look at the guidelines, and then if someone is at garage sales or what.
Exactly. Yeah. We were trying to, going around neighborhoods, we see a lot of signage for garage sales or whatever posted on light
Yeah.
poles and stuff, and then they're not removed.
No.
And they just sit there. So looking around, members have found that the metro poles downtown are really useful, but the problem with the metro poles is once they paste it up, nothing's removed, because I went to actually look at them. So there's like inches of caked on, and they look
Yeah.
terrible once they get. So we decided, well, why don't we get a board, an info board, a community board, where people can post what events they're having, if it's like a lost cat, whatever that's important for them to communicate to the rest of the residents, will be centralized in one area for now.
No, and I appreciate that. Thank you. That's where just when you come back, it would just be what the use is, and we would need perhaps like a draft policy for that to be what is, and then who's going to look after it and maintain it, that sort of piece. Okay?
Yeah.
All right, so, so that's pretty, but the recommendation is that council authorize the SPA committee to use the kiosk poles to create an area for local event signage, and this would return to council.
Right, but once we know, through your worship, once we know that we can use it, we can design what we'd like to see there,
Okay.
and then bring that back for discussion from council.
Okay, very good. Moved by Councillor Loggins, seconded by Councillor Berger. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. And then the other one was the cost of the crosswalk project. So that is basically
Just for
that
information.
council authorized the SPA committee to work with staff and MOTI on the crosswalk installation project. There's just no language, so I'm kind of making this one up. Sounds good? Okay, moved by Councillor Loggins, seconded by Councillor Pearson. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. And then lastly, to receive this report for information. Moved by Councillor Loggins, seconded by Councillor Pearson. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much, gentlemen, and to the other volunteers on the committee. We really appreciate the work that you do and look forward to seeing this come to life. Okay. Moving on, animal control contract renewal. So this has come before council in the past. Previously, there was a desire to look at potentially bringing this matter in-house or to examining our cost for services. Staff will present, and I also understand that Mr. Don Brown from the CRD is also available tonight to answer any questions should council have any. But for now, I'll turn it over to staff. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm just going to do a quick overview of the written staff report that you have in front of you. There are a total of 13 municipalities within the CRD, which 3 are requisitioned, 6 hold contracts, and the remaining 4 provide the services in-house or through the Victoria Animal Control Services. Under the costs bullets, Sooke is one of 3 municipalities in the CRD paying for their services through requisition alongside 3 electoral areas. Our contribution is 21% of their budget. The calculation of the price is based on the municipal assessment values, which is the net tax value of your land improvements. Oh, is your...
Sorry, our screen just blinked out. Maybe go on.
All of the services are inclusive, so it's not a set per service fee. There's no additional costs regardless of the amount of time or resources required. This can fluctuate and change as each month goes on. The ability to redistribute the services is offered, and that's to accommodate for any changes, and there's no additional fees for that as well. So the differences between the requisition and the contract seem to be what has come to bring us where we are today. I've done a bit of research over the past couple months and talked to Don quite a bit, and we've found out that the requisition, which is what we are currently in, staff believes that remaining with the current requisition contract allows for a guaranteed level of service at a fair and reasonable cost, receiving the best value for our community. The contract, for those municipalities with the contract, are based on individual requirements. For example, some of them may offer services in-house, such as licensing programs to offset their costs with the CRD. The fee structure is based on a formula based on population in the contract, and these contracts have no addition or have an additional fixed annual contract amount with a built-in annual increase, which allows for no ability to budget past the 3-year term, and these prices can fluctuate. Staff have been advised that Sooke is one of the busiest communities within the CRD with respects to dangerous dogs. With the CRD constantly in our community educating the public and managing their own parks, which are within our community, they are always present in the area, able to answer calls for service in a timely manner. Regardless of which avenue Sooke does choose, a decrease in the cost will ultimately mean a reduction in services. Leaving the requisition will mean that Sooke is increasing the costs of the remaining communities within the requisition, and will not be able to reestablish our position in the requisition once we leave. An important note is that the CRD has been running their Animal Control Services division in a deficit for many years. As contracts are renewed, most likely services will increase. Staying in the requisition ensures our municipality will maintain our services at costs that we're able to estimate. We provided you with 3 options. The following options are all inside of your council package with a little bit more of a breakdown. It's important to note that if options B or C are options council is wishing to go with, they both have financial and legal impacts. So both of these would need to come back to council with further information and further research from staff. And like I said earlier, Don Brown, the Chief Bylaw Officer from the CRD, is here tonight to answer any questions that council might have.
Okay, thank you very much for the very thorough report. Questions from members of council? If you like, sir, if there's questions, Councillor Parkinson.
Through your worship, I actually have a question in regards to, they say that we're the busiest municipality of all of them with in respect to dangerous dogs and dog bite incidences. I was wondering if you had any numbers on those for the district of Sooke.
I don't have those at hand, but
Sorry, could you please turn on the microphone?
He looks really little.
Just one...
In front.
Right on the base of the stem.
Oh, this one.
Oh, it's off now. Thank you, sir. You had mentioned that the stats aren't available now, but maybe if you could share them with us, that would be great.
Yes, and of course you're talking population-wise too. Sooke's much bigger than Michos and Highlands, obviously, and the Southern Gulf Islands, and you're also bigger than population than Salt Spring Island, so that sort of goes hand in hand.
Okay. Other comments from members of council? Councillor Pearson.
Yeah, through the chair to the staff, thank you for the report tonight. And I have firsthand experience in dealing with several municipalities and animal control in my other role. And Mr. Brown was kind enough to put a presentation on for me, 4 presentations over the last several weeks. And I want to, give a vote of confidence out to the CRD. I really believe they do a great job across our region. So I will be supporting option A to renew the CRD contract for now. So,
thank you, Councillor Pearson.
So I'll make that motion.
Okay. So here it is, so the recommendation from staff, because we've been extending this sort of piecemeal over the years, is that council authorize the mayor and CAO to enter into a 5-year agreement for animal control services with the Capital Regional District.
That's the motion.
Second.
Okay, so that's been moved by Councillor Pearson and seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Anything further from members of council? I think we've had a long time to think about this, and thank you for the details there. And excellent. We'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. You're in favor. You can't oppose your own motion. Anyway, you could, but it's okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick comment. In-house, I can tell you for $85,000, that's basically one person, wages, benefits, and I mean, you're talking about a lot of costs. I mean, we run a shelter facility with a full-time staff person. You got 7-day-a-week coverage, so obviously one person can't do 7 days a week. We have people on call from 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. daily. We have a person on call all 24 hours for stat holidays. Training, training new people. We have a very experienced, dedicated staff to, I've been here 16 years in my position. There's 5 of my 10 people have been longer than me, so there is an economy of scale.
And the plus staffing and running the pound as well, and the vehicles to get the animals
the
there.
food, the vehicles, the gas, the maintenance. I mean, you're talking about, and the pound, leasing our pound facility, leasing office space. I mean, some of the stuff you could do with your own, like your HR staff, but you're adding something to their workload as well.
Yeah, good point. Thank you, Mr. Brown, and thank you for attending this evening and for the work you do. Okay, next we have item 10.3, Rural Road Rehabilitation, and Mr. Derrick, are you presenting this evening?
Good evening, Your Worship. I will be presenting. Before I get into the report itself, I'm going to do a brief presentation on the Rural Road Rehab Program, just because we haven't touched on it before, compared to the 5-year road improvement program, which we did previously. So just a little explanation about the Rural Road Rehab Program. So with the 2018 road improvement program, we started with a $700,000 budget, and when all was said and done for our first planned year of the program, we spent about $520,000 after all the final quantities were in, leaving approximately $180,000 remainder. So through concerns and complaints from the public, and also firsthand, sorry, my thing isn't working.
You got to click it.
It's on. Oh. Sorry. So when we wrote up the initial report for the 5-year road improvement program, some of the more rural isolated segments were calculated different for the pavement condition index. They were calculated as large segments, so it kind of ignored some of the smaller flawed areas, hence why some of them got left out of the report or got left till far later in the report than what you would have expected. So this small map shows some of the sections that I've identified, so I'll go over them individually in detail. So on Phillips Road at the northern end, what I'm proposing is two patches. Each one is approximately 100 meters long by 4 to 5 meters wide. They go up the hill at the north end of the road. One goes up the hill, one goes down the other side of the hill. I got a couple pictures just to show the current quality of the pavement. So as you can see there, that's the backside of the one hill where the pavement's almost littered away to gravel. It's extremely washboarded and it's in very poor condition, probably one of the most poor condition pieces of road we have. Moving on, we have a small section of Blythewood Road. On that, I've only proposed one patch. It's about 50 meters long by 4.5 meters wide. The road dips at a culvert, so it's heavily alligator cracked. It wavers from side to side and shows signs of deep base failure. Next, we have the first 150 meters approximately on Glynns Lake Road is also a similar patchwork of old cold mix patches and stuff. And I think Glynns Lake Road, although it doesn't get driven a lot, it's the first piece of Sooke a lot of people see when they're driving their kids out to Camp Thunderbird for the first time. So I think it's important to have the first 150 meters of the road look decent, because once you get past that, you get to freshly paved road, which is actually in incredibly good condition for the amount of traffic the road sees. That's another picture of it. Finally, the last road on the list is Connie Road. So I've got 5 patches varying from 20 meters to 35 meters in length going up the hill. These are some pictures of those patches. I've also identified the apron, which is the first 20 meters or so of pavement as you turn onto the road, which is extremely potholed itself. So the general scope of work we're going for with these projects is to mill approximately 6 inches deep or 150 millimeters. We're going to regrade the millings back in place and then pave a 50 millimeter overlay on top of that. So that's generally what we're proposing, since the bases and the road surface themselves are far too flawed for any type of overlay or general milling work. So moving on to, this is just an overview of the job. So moving on to the recommendations, staff advertised a 15-day posting for the 2018 Rural Road Rehab Program, and we received 2 bids. Both contractors submitted completed tenders, displayed the capacity and experience to complete the work. So my recommendation is based solely on price. So the recommendation, or the two bids we received, were from Island Asphalt Company for $181,500 and Capital City Paving for $192,300. So my recommendation is to award the contract to Island Asphalt Company for $181,500. Should you decide you would like to proceed with the work.
Thank you very much, Mr. Derrick, for your work on this. It's just great to see us get on top of our roads, or to start to anyway. In terms of the budget amount that is left over, there's just the difference because we're about at 180, and then there's the GST component. So where would the balance, like where would the GST amount come from? I'm just wondering which, because that would...
Your Worship, that would be a question for finance. I know by the end of the year that gets reconciled. However, if there's some type of overlap, we do have other accounts available with money, you know, where we could draw from if we were to overdraw the road improvement program budget and then pay back or sort something out.
Okay. Any, Councillor Casper?
Second.
Okay, so we're moving the recommendation, and by Councillor Casper, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Any further questions for staff? Councillor Pearson, or go to Councillor Casper.
No, we do get a GST rebate annually, and it's minus a very small percentage. So the money will come back eventually.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Pearson?
Yes. Through the chair to the staff, thank you for the good report. Just had some questions about that northern end of Phillips Road. I had the opportunity to go up there on the long weekend and kind of poke around at that road. It looks like, you know, you're recommending some improvements there, but it looks like we need a lot more up there. Like, I mean, it's you know, the gravel's actually gone in most places, and so is there some drainage issues along there as well, or like what would be your best case scenario to fix up Phillips Road? That would be.
Through your Worship, well, what we're dealing with at the northern end is, it depends on where you are. Like the section that I've submitted for work here is the actual hill portion. So the hill in the summertime would be your worst section because it gets dry and blown out, and it gets in the condition it is now. So the hill, and it doesn't hold water. So if you were to do this type of work on the hill, it would probably hold up for a little while because it doesn't hold standing water. The drainage issues are to the end north of the hill in the flat sections, and that's where we don't have sufficient cross culverts to actually drain water from one side of the road to the other. So we'd kind of just be throwing money away to spend money on that until we take care of the drainage issues.
And that's my question: is what does it need? What does that road need to be rehabilitated back to drivable status? Because
through your Worship, at, you know, an offhand, or I've spent a lot of time out there looking at it, but we would definitely need drainage out there essentially, and we need better drainage than what we have. We currently have 2.5 cross culverts, but neither are really operating properly, but they both drain through private property at the moment. So any upgrades we were to do to those culverts would have to be sanctioned by the property owners whose land would be drained onto. So that's where it's a complicated issue, not one we could just throw in brand new culverts and call her done.
So we can expect some emails this winter.
That is correct.
So it's a work in progress. This will get it there for a while, but I think further works, but also working matters with the property owners is essential. We can't fix and what I'm hearing is we can't address the drainage until we have permission from the landowners to work on their land.
To your Worship, yeah, exactly. We can't, there's little value in working on the flat section until we do something about the drainage, and to do the drainage we need an agreement with the homeowners. So really that's where we're at. So that's why I thought the hills are, in a sense, the worst spot. That's where you need traction to get up and over. So if we can do something on that, at least, even if it's just a Band-Aid for the whole section of road, it's something.
Okay, very good. So this has been moved and seconded. Anything else from any member of council? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Derrick. And if the district staff could just keep us posted, just send out a media release so we know when the work is happening. That'll be great. Thank you. Okay, our next item up is the Sooke River Road Drainage Tender Award. So this has been on something that has been worked on for a while, and we had discussion about this also earlier in the year. So, Mr. Derrick, you're presenting on this as well?
Yes, I am, Your Worship. So this is a shorter one. Essentially, everyone knows the background of the Sooke River Road Drainage Project. So we held the 22-day posting for the tender and came up with 3 bids. All 3 bids, once again, were completed fully by qualified, experienced contractors. And the bids came out as follows. Excuse me, because my writing's quite small here. We had Western Watershed Designs Incorporated at $183,477.50. We had Plant Contracting at $219,875, and then we had 4M Bobcat and Trucking Limited at $289,182, plus GST. So staff's recommending awarding the contract to Western Watershed Designs Incorporated for $183,477.50, or $50.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Derrick. I'm just curious, what amount did we have estimated in the budget for it?
To Your Worship, for the works itself, our estimate was approximately $220,000 plus a $40,000 contingency,
okay.
Approximately 15 to 20% contingency. So the winning bid was lower than what we expected, but.
Okay. And what I understand is that you have to have this work done in a certain time for the fish season, fish window?
To Your Worship, we have to have the work within approximately like 15 meters of the river done by September 15th.
Okay.
Hence the push to get it done so quickly. So in order to do that, basically the trees along the right-of-way have to be cleared, and then from that point on, they'll work backwards from the river. So really only by September 15th, we only have to have 20% of the work completed, but it does have to, that portion has to be done by September 15th.
Okay, it'll still be busy, I think, just with visitors to the potholes and the like, so I would just recommend, again, any sort of announcement that can go up for any sort of disruption to the flow of traffic would be helpful. Councillor Casper?
Yeah, through you to staff. So this is considerably lower than what was envisioned a number of years ago, some $300,000 to fix the problem, correct?
Through Your Worship, I believe, yeah, we had 350,000 perhaps in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's good news. Well done, Mr. Derrick, and your team there. Okay, is okay, Councillor Berger's moving the recommendations, seconded by Councillor Loggins. Any further discussion? It's great. Just look forward to seeing this complete. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you very much for your time and expertise. Okay, next is 10.5, the Sooke Corridor Sewer Specified Area Proposed Boundary Adjustment for South Nations IR2. This matter has been before numerous councils for quite some time, and we have received the formal petition now to move this forward, but I'll turn this to staff to introduce and discuss.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you just mentioned, this has been an issue that's been ongoing for many, many years. Upon staff's request to the Sooke First Nations, we received a petition for inclusion to the sewer service area. We have since found out that it is not a petition that is needed, but the petition that we received we can treat as an application to come into the SSA. The reason for the petition not being required is it requires a bylaw that's not applicable to Indian Reserve land. So from that, I would just like to go over the report quickly for you. As I said, for over a decade, Council has authorized staff to carry out discussions with the Sooke First Nations regarding the development of an agreement which would enable the district to service IR number 2 with community sewer. After discussions, the district received the petition, since that time we've had discussions with the Sooke First Nations engineer, and after that discussions, the district received a petition for inclusion which generated further dialogue with the First Nations consulting engineer over and above the original dialogue. The discussions with the engineer have confirmed the area of IR number 2 proposed for the servicing in stage 1, which I have on the plan. Excuse me.
Here in our motions didn't come through.
Excuse me, Your Worship, I had slides, or I thought I had a presentation, but it's the plan's in your package. It shows the heavy outline of the what is known as the first stage. It's approximately 76 single-family homes. During the discussions with the First Nations engineer, the lift station, or excuse me, a lift station of force main would be required to be produced on the Indian Reserve land, and then the sewage would be lifted right into the headworks of our sewer plant. There would be no other infrastructure required to be utilized. We have confirmed with our engineering firm, Stantec Engineering, that the 76 homes approximately would be able to be received by our system and would not have a negative impact. The Sooke First Nations, because of their federal funding, would have to own and operate the lift station, and all the piping and everything was within the IR number 1. They would have to also own the pipe that would go across our land into our headworks, so we would have to work up a suitable agreement and easement for that work as we go through. We will have to enter into a municipal type servicing agreement, which they call it, and that is produced through dialogue with the Sooke First Nation and INAC, or Indian and Northern Affairs people. The agreement would be such that all works and services would be owned and operated by the First Nations. And we'd also have to work into the agreement that the agreement would be only for the first phase because of future capacity issues and concerns that we may have with the plant. The agreement would also necessitate part and part of the parcel tax and the connection fees. But all these things would have to be dealt with within the agreement. There are agreements up and down the island with First Nations and other municipalities as it pertains to water systems, but this would be one of the first ones for a sewer system. And the reason for the report coming forward right at the moment is staff, we're looking for direction or an approval in principle that council would be amenable to service IR number 2 with sewer, so we can start a really meaningful dialogue with the Sooke First Nation and obtain the necessary agreement. The necessary agreement will cost money to do. There will be consulting engineering required to go with it. So staff is looking for some, as I said, some agreement in principle to move forward. So we're just not talking to the Sooke First Nations and getting an agreement or getting a municipal type servicing agreement that may not go anywhere. On that, I'd just like to end and say that I'd be more than happy to answer questions that you may have, questions that I may be able to answer you from my dialogue with the consulting engineer who has done this before. So I'll just leave it at that, if I may.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Howitt. So we have the report here and a recommendation. Questions from council? Councillor Casper, then Berger.
So I'm not opposed to doing this on this basis. Some time ago, council gave approval in principle to expanding this sewer service area before. I think it was in 2012 or 13, something like that. So there's already a motion on the books to do that. But I would like to see an agreement or the terms and conditions of the agreement before we grant like an outright approval. That's just one of the things that I'm wanting to look at.
Just if I may, Councillor Casper, likely that would need to return because it would need council's authority to sign off.
No, I just want to know some of my concerns and details. So on the cost per residential unit, and currently there would be a requirement to pay $6,000 times the 77 or 76 units, correct? So, and then plus all the capital works associated with it. So, And then there's also the annual fee that everybody else pays within the sewer specified area. Would that be included?
If I may, Your Worship, I didn't get into the specifics and the details with regards to everything that would have to be included into this municipal servicing agreement. All that would be taken into account. They, being the Sooke First Nations, would be responsible for the annual payment of the land tax, or the parcel tax, as everybody pays within the sewer service area now. They would be required to pay the hookup fees and everything else related to it. And as we move forward with the agreement, and it was stated, any kind of agreement would have to come back to council for their consideration and acceptance before any movement with regards to construction or flow or sewage flows into our system.
So, and my last question then relates to a technical aspect of it, which would probably be an engineering issue, and that is the residential units that are part of IR number 2 on Wright Road. Would those units, if the whiff and spit area was to be sewered, would those be able to hook up to any new system that would be along Wright Road if that area is included in the sewer service?
Through Your Worship, through to Councillor Casper, the engineering that we have received to date is very preliminary and is captured within IR number 1, IR number 2 itself. It did not anticipate capturing anything outside the IR at this point in time.
Okay. Councillor Berger?
Yes, thank you. I, too, share some similar concerns as Councillor Casper. Procedurally, through you to staff, would this be treated like any other new subdivision coming in? Would we have first, second, third reading, public hearing?
Through you, Your Worship, as Mr. Howitt mentioned, the district's sewer bylaw that we would normally have or receive the petition doesn't apply because our bylaws cannot apply to the IR2 lands, which is why we need to negotiate an agreement that will look similar to what we have in those bylaws, but that's the difference. We need the agreement versus a bylaw.
Okay, thank you. So procedurally for me, I'm really uncomfortable with, the recommendation says to agree to service the Sooke Nation IR2 located off Whiff Spit Road, and then to direct staff to enter into discussions and negotiations. I would prefer to see the contract first and then agree if that's going to work. I'm not comfortable agreeing to providing sewer, and I know that it will come back to council once we have the agreement in front of us, but I'm very hesitant and not comfortable of agreeing to provide sewer and then enter into negotiations and see what that contract looks like later. I would much rather have a recommendation go forward that council enter into discussions with Sooke Nation regarding the municipal type sewers agreement. I'd like to see the agreement first and then agree whether sewer is a good fit for our community going forward. I strongly believe that everyone that comes and develops in our community has to follow a process and they have to follow a fee structure, and I think that that should be applied here as well. So personally, I cannot support the recommendation as laid out. I'd like to see the agreement first. Thank you.
Okay, my only comment there is that that second part there and that is there is exactly what we have already moved, or council today already moved. So on May 1st, 2012, so at that time, the motion was moved and seconded to authorize the mayor to sign and issue the attached letter of intent to the Sooke Nation to enter into discussions for the provision of sanitary sewer servicing to the R2 reserve lands, and to authorize staff and this is the part here, and to authorize staff to enter into discussions with the Sooke Nation to draft a sanitary sewer agreement to provide the owners and occupiers of IR2 lands with sanitary sewer servicing. So that's where it's the case where that just hasn't happened, and it's been 6 years now. So it's the case of we can add in, I see that there's been agree in principle to service the lands. I think it just needs some motivation because it's been 6 years and it's just been idle. And there's been other conversations that are in that, but they're in camera. I can't read them because they haven't been released yet. But it's the case where this has been an item that we need to move forward on, and which is why it's here. That's why I think in order to motivate us, the petition came in to at least get it to council to discuss it.
Yes, and thank you. And just as a follow-up, I completely agree with you. And because we've already we've already agreed in principle previously, now I think our motion would be, I saw it in the report that says something was signed. Anyhow, for me, I think the most important part of this is to direct staff to enter into those discussions and come up with an agreement.
We haven't agreed in principle to service. That first motion at the top is something that is new. So that's where I think just the two together, I think they have to go together, because otherwise the second one doesn't lead us anywhere. 6 years another council will be sitting here having this exact same conversation. And that's just my take on it. So I think with adding in with this together, that council agreeing principle to service, that language is much stronger than what I've seen here in the past.
If I may, Your Worship, the reason for bringing it forward again is to get some firmer direction, if I could use that vernacular, because there is a cost associated with moving forward with the municipal type servicing agreement, and certainly a cost moving forward if there's further detailed engineering required as we move forward with that agreement. And in discussions with the consulting engineer who is representing the Soule First Nation, they were looking for something a little more definitive before moving forward. And certainly INAC, the federal government, is also looking for something a little more definitive before they embark on spending a whole lot of money with regards to this as well. I'm sure that the way the resolution is written now, it certainly would be a little more firmer, a little firmer, if you will, as we move forward. And I have no problem entering into a dialogue with them with this particular resolution.
Yeah, and that's why I think that first motion the two have to go together, because that'll give staff the direction from council, to obtain the appropriate agreement to look after the district's interests. It'll also give the Sauk Nation a bit more movement, and that's why I feel that they probably petitioned, because they're waiting for something to happen. Otherwise, you said it. I don't need to say it. Councillor
Just
Berger.
as one last follow-up, I like the amendment, that's done here with using the verbiage agree in principle rather than agree to service. So I'm okay with that. Just a procedural question. Any engineering that needs to be done, wouldn't that be borne by the applicant? I definitely can see the need for a consultant to come up with a municipal service agreement. However, I really strongly believe that the applicant should be treated like every other application. Thank you.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Berger, all the preliminary engineering that we've received to date has all been borne by the applicant. Anything further in that relationship would be borne by them as well. The agreement presumably would be drafted by INAC with input from our own solicitor. So there will be some costs associated with this as we move forward, but starting on it now in this vein, I think it'd be bode well for us as we move forward with our relationship with the Sauk First Nation. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Parkinson.
Through your worship, we've been sitting here for almost 4 years, and 2 months before the end of our term, we decided to bring this up for council for this discussion. I find that very interesting, and I think that a bigger discussion has to be made on this. We have not had a committee of the whole to discuss this, to find out information. I was wondering what our members from the sewer plant think of this, if they have any concerns or thoughts on this, and seeing as they're not present. I was wondering how many phases will be in this project, and will we have to honor all the phases, and how many future homes will that bring to the community and to the septic or to the sewer system?
Your Worship, as part of the agreement, the municipal servicing agreement, that will acknowledge those types of things with regards to first phase 72, 73 approximately, and then there would be no other connections available until such time that the agreement was reopened by Mayor and Council and agreed to. The reason for the stipulation of that is so we don't run into a capacity problem in the future. But as I said, this all has to be written into the agreement in a legal way, in a binding way. The agreement is not only with the Sooke First Nations, but it is also with the federal government. So there is some trust associated with the agreement as we move forward.
Follow-up, Councillor Parkinson?
Yes, please. And in regards to Councillor Casper, where he mentioned the homes along Wright Road, will they all be included with the IR? Or could they? There's a number of houses along the, as you're driving down it on the right-hand side, so they're not actually on the reserve, but they are reserve land, correct?
Your Worship, it's certainly something that could be considered. It wasn't included in the preliminary engineering that we've received to date, but it certainly could be part of the dialogue. The workings within IR number 1 or number 2 right now is certainly pipe sizing and things like that is not a problem. Capacity at the plant, we'd have to relook at it, because what we did is have our own engineers do a capacity issue with regards to the 72 plus or minus, not any further ones at this point in time.
Through your worship. And then in regards to Kaltassin Road, when I was previously on council, there was discussion that Kaltassin would be the number 1 priority for the council of the day, and that with all the commercial businesses down that way, with the mobile home parks down that way, the apartment buildings and everything down there, that there was a real concern with seepage and things like that. So we should have the discussion about that area as well. And I think that is a very important area for us to be looking at for the sewages.
Yeah, so there is a correspondence that in our agenda that came from the Kaltassin area, so we can discuss that in greater detail at that time, because this is IR2 is on this side of the river. Yeah. Councillor Loggins? Councillor Pearson?
Yeah. I've got some, I think all the concerns have been raised. So would the sense of urgency, through the chair to Director of Engineering, would the sense of urgency be from the First Nations, the South First Nations? So the way you described it is that we hadn't heard anything, so we got them to petition us? That's kind of what I heard here tonight. So,
Your Worship, through to Councillor Pearson, as the report says, we've been at this for quite a while, and when I started to get back into it, I realized that we really hadn't had anything formal from the South First Nation with regards to an application, if you will. So we embarked on getting a petition as we would for any other person applying to come into the SSA. But as we found out through our legal counsel, the petition, our normal petition process isn't applicable to IR lands. So the petition that we received now is an application, if you will. And what this allows for is for the sewer service to go in for IR for the first 70-odd homes and allow their residents to come back, because my understanding is they haven't been able to move back, some of them, with regards to homes there, because they don't have adequate sewage, in-ground sewage disposal at this point in time. So they are looking at us to supply and service them with community sewer at this time.
And I know there was some in-camera discussion, and I guess I probably won't bring that up. Because we did talk about this in 2012, and there was a series of recommendations that came to council as well. So I'm kind of struggling with not with the concept. I think it's a good concept, but just of where does it go? So again, we agree in principle, and then we enter into more discussions, which was the exact same motion as the mayor just pointed out in 2012. So I guess I would like to see some kind of hope for action or something down the road.
Ms. Machetta?
Through your worship, the difference between this motion and the motion that came forward in 2012 was that there was no agreement in principle to service the lands. The motion was to authorize the mayor to sign a letter of intent to enter into discussions. So there was actually no intent to service, and that's the difference.
Councillor Casper?
Well, I'm going to pick up on, through you, what staff said earlier, not once but twice, is that they need some direction because it will cost some money to hire a representative on behalf of the district to enter into these discussions to bring forward or to prepare a formal legal agreement. Now, I don't have a problem with doing that, and I think that's what staff is after, and I can support that as long as all the details are brought forward publicly and that we have a broader discussion as to what the financial implications are for the Sooke First Nation in regard to the total costs that they are going to be committed to pay, and then what our potential costs are for bringing on that service, if any. And I think, you know, without getting into any of the discussions that we've had, both from our law firm and what we've discussed in camera, I think that we have to be very cautious as to how we proceed, because once it's done, there's no turning back. And so that's something to consider. You can't just say, I'm going to turn off the tap. Once an agreement has been made and once the contracts are signed, that's what it shall be. And this will be the very first time that the district has entered into an agreement for such services other than fire protection outside of our municipal boundaries. Because these lands are not included in the municipal boundaries, and our sewer service is only for those within the municipality as it stands right now. So we're going out beyond what that sewer system was originally designed and built for. So I think we have to exercise with caution to protect the interests of the people who have paid the bill to date. The sewer's been in operation since 2006. They've been paying for all the services and all the upkeep and everything and the maintenance and minor capital since that time. So that's 12 years. So we have an obligation to proceed, but very cautiously. And that's all I want to see happen. So I just can't support saying we're going to approve it and agree to service it. It has to be subject to an agreement that is acceptable and approved by council that makes good financial sense. So that's all I'm hoping for.
Okay. Councillor Berger?
I'll move the recommendation.
Okay, moved and seconded. So we're moving the first part or together?
Together if we can.
Moving them together. Okay, so that's moved by Councillor Berger, seconded by Councillor Loggins, and as been said, this is to start this process. So there's going to be further to come back, but it's been sitting and it's been stuck, and that's why we got the petition to move it down the pipe, so to speak. All right, anything further? All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried unanimously. Okay. So next item, item 10.6, MRDT business plan funding. So let's see. I know Mr. Blackhall wanted to speak on this, but he has been grounded, actually unable to fly out from where he's at to be here tonight. So we do have a report in front of us here, and I know Councillor Berger, as our liaison to the Economic Development Group, might have a bit to share about this, perhaps, or no? I don't want to put you on the spot. No.
No, I'm happy if we can have the. I think the committee's here to speak to it as well.
Okay, Councillor Casper.
I don't mean to stop you, but I think we have to give some indication where this money's going to come from to pay for the legal and whatever. Because that wasn't identified in the motion.
Council contingency.
No, it wasn't.
I think Councillor Casper's referring to the IR
previous-
lands.
yeah, the
Oh, pardon me, okay. I was,
For
yeah.
now, that would come out of our legal budget.
Okay, all
Legal.
right, okay, that's
good?
fine then. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, no, that's good. So in this case, we have a report in front of us, and from what I recall in speaking with Mr. Blackhall, is that previous years we have had a budgeted amount to talk about this business plan funding, and then this year it was not in there, but the group has still since met and carried on, which has brought this forward. So is there a committee member that would like to speak briefly on this? Is there anything to add further to the report? One item that did come forward to me from a local business owner was that, and this is a question I'll just pose to you, is if you do not have the vote, why proceed in this fashion? Because I guess the proponent doesn't feel that the vote would pass, so why are we spending the money unless he said maybe I'm better off phoning everyone myself and seeing if there is some sort of an agreement, because if the vote doesn't pass, then it doesn't move ahead.
Lee Boyko, 6494 Riverstone. Well, I guess like in the previous discussion and the previous issue, you want to have the contract in front of you, and this is exactly what you would have, is the contract in front of you. So for those people to be able to vote with informed information, they have to know what they're voting on. So any attempt to ask people how they're going to vote at this point, and to clarify all accommodations will be the ones who will finally make the decision to vote for it, although council will still have an ability to say yay or nay down the road on to this program. But until those people have a proposal in front of them, there's nothing for them to vote on. So, we could stop everything in the track if we wanted to, but this is one step forward, I think, at this point.
Thank you for that. Yes, thank you. Also in here, it is asking for the district to sign off in approval, but that's where once we get the report back, then we would be able to receive that and then give approval at that time.
My understanding of the process, and our friend here can tell a bit more, yes, I mean, eventually there's a bylaw that has to be passed by council to approve this. Once enough of the accommodations vote in favor of it, it still has to have a bylaw passed by council to go forward to that. The CRD also will have to have input as well.
If I wanted to sound the level thing.
Okay, questions from members of council? Councillor Pearson.
Well, thank you, I think, for what you're doing behind the scenes and requesting for this, because I think without a plan, it's like a ship without a rudder. So I think the plan going into place, I support the room tax, as you know, and I think that going forward, it's your only opportunity to promote our area. It's time for us to brag about our area, and I know that single-handedly some operators themselves have been doing it, and I think collectively there's a real benefit to this. So, and I think it was our finance director, who's not here tonight, that said that there's about $180,000 or somewhere in that neighborhood, in that range. So I think it's really good. So I'm going to make the recommendation, or I'm going to make a motion to support the recommendation that council approve $15,000.
Okay, so that's been moved by Councillor Pearson and seconded by Councillor Parkinson. So that'll be $15,000 from council contingency to CERTA to prepare this plan. Anything further? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you for your work and for sitting through this meeting. You can join us at any time. What else do you have to do on a Monday night? This is good. It's your community. Okay. 10.7, funding for community policing officer statute. So council may recall a delegation that has come forward to us before about this, and there was the poster and the like that we received, and so now we have a report and a request for a $5,000 contribution. So Comments, questions from council? Someone like to move the motion? Moving the recommendation, both pieces? Okay, both pieces moved by Councillor Loggins, seconded by Councillor Pearson. Anything further? See none. All those in favor? Opposed? That's also carried unanimously. I just need to back up to 10.6. There was a request from Mr. Brian White, who just left, about having the students from Royal Roads meet with staff or meet with available staff and council in chambers. Councillor Berger?
Yes, thank you. I had been emailing back and forth, and my last email, and I did see a reply come in from Ms. Stankowski, and I haven't opened it yet. With respects to the Royal Road students, we're looking at the same sort of MRD tax, and so the last email that I had sent was that possibly they could, if this was a project they're working on, that they could meet up with CERTA.
Okay.
And I'm sorry I didn't open the response, so I don't know what the response was. I'm sorry.
Okay, so for Royal Roads to connect with CERTA then, right? Because
that was my last email, because I quoted the recommendation in my previous email stating that if council go forward with this, then the district itself won't be creating the policy. It would be handed off to CERTA to create that policy.
Okay. Ms. Santowski has information. Is council agreeable to having a reply, just so we know this?
Yes.
Ms. Santowski, if you could please. Do I need a motion to allow a resident? Is that okay? All right. Is there a seconder? We're just sort of going out of order. Okay, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. No. Thank you.
Hi, Britt Santowski, 2206 Church Road. I'm the one who is working with the students, so I'm familiar with the project. And I think in the emails back and forth, we kind of lost track of what the focus was. And I think you had it originally until I threw in the words hotel tax, and then everything kind of went kaboom. The students are actually looking at the best way to administer economic development in Sooke. So be that through the chamber, be that through CERTA, or be that through a third entity, being the Business Improvement Association. They're not looking at the hotel tax. That is out of scope for the students. What they wanted to do was consult with staff to look into the administration of an economic development policy. And that was it.
So that'll be Friday, August the 17th. I think that date is a bit difficult for staff.
And yeah, we're fine to move on and have a different client altogether as well.
Okay.
Because we've been trying to negotiate this for about 3 weeks now, and so we've had to move on with the students.
Okay.
If there is still the option there, that would be great. The students would love the opportunity to connect with staff on that.
Okay. Okay. We'll leave it for...
I just know that our Director of Finance, interim CAO, and planning staff are away the date that they requested the meeting.
Okay. That's a challenge. It's just the holidays right now is a bit tough. Okay. Thank you for coming up and clarifying that. Okay. So we've moved on to the statute. We've covered that. Thank you very much. We've called the question on that. We're good. Thank you for waiting with us. 10.8, property tax write-off request. Is that the right language for that heading? Okay. Okay, so what we have here is the report and a request in that council directs staff to request the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing to write off the property tax owing for folio 070210.022 in the amount of $863.57 plus accrued interest of $27.55 for a total of $891.12 under Section 781 of the Local Government Act. Moved by Councillor Parkinson, seconded by Councillor Loggins. Anything further? It's all in the report. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay. 10.9 is the Knox Vision Society permissive tax exemption. We have a request here on setting this up for 2018. Moved by Councillor Casper and seconded by Councillor Pearson. Any discussion on the permissive tax exemption? Okay. See none? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Landscape maintenance. So here where we have the two areas, Edward Mill Frontage Road and also the Welcome to Sooke Gateway sign at Highway 14 and Phillips Road. Councillor Parkinson.
I would like to, through your worship, I would just like to state that I agree with the district looking after the lands for the, especially for the gateway signage, where we have our stone there, which is our Welcome to Sooke sign. And you can say that highways should be looking after it, but there's no way that they will be coming out and planting flowers around our signage. I think that the district asks the people of Sooke, the residents of Sooke, to mow the boulevards that are not part of their lawns, but we ask them to do it so that we do not have enough staff to be doing that, so that they look after the properties for us, and we expect them to do that for us, yet we can't look after two small pieces that are the most welcoming areas coming into Sooke. So I'd like to say that I support this motion, and I would like to make the recommendation.
Okay, so that's moved and seconded. So that is to direct staff to maintain the Edward Milne Frontage Road Boulevard and the Welcome to Sooke Gateway sign at Highway 14 and Phillips Road. Would we need some sort of agreement then, because it's not just to cover off the work safe and that sort of piece?
Your Worship, in discussions with the MOT, they will issue us a permit,
Okay.
and that would allow our insurances to cover us, and that would be an interim scenario, and then we would walk into an agreement with them with regards to the two areas for maintenance.
Okay. I agree with Councillor Parkinson. What we learned in the Community in Bloom's tour is that the general highways will cut the grass when I think it's like 25 centimeters tall or something. That's when they mow it. And so when you look in this particular area, there's a concern of fire. There's bus stops. If someone throws out cigarette butts, it is as you're slowing down and coming into Sooke. And there's that particular area. Then, of course, there's our Welcome to Sooke sign. They won't plant flowers or do any form of beautification. So I completely support this. Councillor Casper?
Yeah, I'm glad this came up. I actually contacted our acting CAO, or Director of Finance, in regard to activities on the highways right-of-way, because we have no formal agreement, never have had a formal agreement. And the council had been advised, I think close to 2 years ago, by the Director of Finance that we don't have the legal authority to spend money on land or properties that we own. We don't have that authority. So by not having an agreement, we weren't doing things properly. And I think in the interest of our workers being covered or signed off in the event of an accident, whatever, heaven forbid, that everybody's covered. But I also think that highways, should also, accept some higher degree of responsibility within our municipality as to what they do and don't do on their road. Because basically, they've been freeloading on Sooke taxpayers. And we've been doing their work for a number of years. Now, it may be to our advantage, but I'll tell you something, they still go out there with their own equipment and look after that. Same boulevard. So, I think it's important to have these things done properly and not just kind of willy-nilly, as has been going on for a number of years.
Well, that's why it's here.
Yes. And I raised it with I sent an email off to our CAO in regard to this, and I'm glad to see that it's here.
Okay. Councillor Pearson?
I'm glad also that it's here. I guess I have a question around the equipment that's in behind that fence by the rock that is painted the color of Department of Highways, or the former Department of Highways. It's orange and white. So who actually owns that equipment now? Who's responsible for that equipment? and I think it's probably served most of its useful life in its current format. So I think there's something that needs to be done. Like, we've got the rock on that one side where it's starting to look pretty nice on that side with the grass, and then we've got a bunch of dilapidated old equipment, being respectful of our history, but I don't know who owns that.
It's the museum, I think. Who's on the Historical Society?
For many years.
Okay, Councillor Parkinson.
And the property and the equipment, the museum looks after it. They don't want to remove it. And they also stated that no one seems to want to take responsibility of owning it, highways or the museum.
To be continued at a later date.
Okay.
We'll focus on the
plantings
plantings and the rocks. It's just, that's another conversation. Councillor Parkinson.
Through your worship. Also in that area is the rotary signage that is there. So there's a number of pieces of different groups that have items in that area. And one of our members that sit on the SPA committee is the Rotarian, and she was bringing it up with the Rotary Club on looking at a refurbishment of the piece or what can be done with it. When you say that that the province has been freeloading off of us, we've been doing the same thing to the residents of Sooke by telling them to go out and mow the lawn, and we've had numerous people contact us, being seniors or whatever, who aren't capable of doing it, but then it doesn't get done for them as well on their property.
Okay, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously? Perfect, we're moving on. Okay, 10.11, wastewater emergency service vehicle. And we have a report here and a request to post an RFP for a 3/4 ton extended cam truck for district wastewater staff. Did we have this in the budget?
Your Worship, this was already in the budget.
Okay.
And we've come forward because of our purchasing policy. We are requesting permission to put out the RFP for the vehicle now.
That's right, and I see it right here under the previous council action, so thank you very much. Okay, discussion, moved by Councillor Loggins, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. On the motion, Councillor Berger.
Yes, thank you. I just was curious as to, through you to staff, does the wastewater operations currently have a vehicle?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Berger, we have 3 vehicles down at the wastewater plant. One of them is getting a little on in years. This one is going to be purpose built. It's going to have a utility flat deck back, and it will eventually have a HIAB on it for lifting pumps, blowers, etc. from the lift stations and from the plant itself. Because right now we don't have any way to move those things around, and we need to hire other people to come in and do it for us. So this will serve that purpose.
Thank you. One other follow-up, and just for my own knowledge, because I don't know this. When something does break, we have certified technicians that can come in, they can use this truck and fix pumps. We don't have to hire out for technical repair?
With this, Your Worship, with this truck and the eventuality of having a HIAB on it, we will be able to take a pump out of a lift station that needs repair, lift it onto the truck, take it down to the plant, work on it, do what we have to do, take it back and replace it.
Okay. Anything further on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. 10.12. This has come to us and is now been gone through its process as well. So here is the recommendation to approve Suburban Motors as a successful proponent, basically as stated for this particular truck. Moved by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor Loggins. So this is for the Fire and Rescue Department. Councillor Berger.
Yes, thank you. Through you to staff, just 2 questions. What truck will this replace, and will it, sorry, 2, maybe 3 questions, and will it replace a vehicle that we currently have? And then does the price include all of the painting, lettering, and all that sort of stuff that goes with it as well?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship to Councillor Berger. The first question is that this one is replacing Squad 1, which is currently residing in Station 2. Squad 1 is a utility vehicle that's getting pretty old in its years and no longer servicing us properly, and it will be disposed of as soon as we're in receipt of the new vehicle. The second part of the question is that the price that you see there is all-inclusive, including the lights, radio, and equipment that's itemized in the report. The vehicle would be delivered right from the fleet of Suburban Motors to a company in Chilliwack called Megatech Technologies that will do all the work. There'll just be a little bit of decaling and fine-tuning at the end that be minor cost, if anything.
Okay. Councillor Casper?
Yeah, I don't get me wrong, but I do get a little concerned when I hear minor costs, because I think the last time we had some decaling done, it was getting pretty close to $2,000. So, and that was on one of our fire department vehicles. So I just want to know, is it going to be $2,000, $1,500? Because we did approve, I think, $70,000 in the budget.
75.
Yeah.
Yeah, the decaling work, that would be pretty minor. Some of the receipts that I've seen this year coming in for some work could be probably less than $500. I can follow up further on, with that. But this one is well within budget, and we chose the lowest bidder, and we have a little bit of room there.
Okay, very good. So we have the motion here. Has this been moved?
Yep.
Okay, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Okay. Reports for information. Attached here, item 11.1 is the Sooke Community Health Services Planning Document. So you'll note, if you've seen this online, that the date keeps changing, and it's basically because we are adding to it. So the main change from this is a new appendix that is including all of the feedback and themes that came from the open house that occurred on June 16th. But what I can say is, although that date says August, most of the pretty much all of the short-term objectives have been met, and the medium and long-term objective is well underway. So all the date was changed from April. It doesn't mean that the work stopped. The work has always continued, and all of this has continued to go on. Some things that you may or may not know is our x-ray service used to be 2 hours twice weekly, then it went to 4 hours twice weekly. Now I understand it's open nearly every day. We have a community paramedicine that has started within the community that does home support, education, and works and does outreach with both and works with the IHN, the Integrated Health Network, the nursing team, as well as the doctors. And then, of course, Doctors of the World has their van that comes out every Thursday and meets with clients that are vulnerable and living in rougher conditions to access health services. So all of that work is done. And some of the pieces on co-location, Island Health has a steering committee that I sit on. It meets every 2 weeks, and it has been meeting every 2 weeks since last year, and has been building on this. So there's a lot of pieces that are coming. So this is just the final document, because the one missing piece was the public engagement piece, and that was held in June. So that is complete, and this is on the website. So it's here for you to receive and ask any questions on if you have any. Okay. A motion to receive? Moved by Councillor Parkinson, seconded by Councillor Berger. Anything from anyone? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? This is carried unanimously. New business, there is none, so that takes us into our correspondence section here. We have some items here. We did have some residents speak earlier on the items to do with Kaltass, and I just want to open it up here. You all would have received this in your inbox, probably. And then, let's see here. So this is item G from July 30th, and there's two. Also item E. And so there is a request from those residents. So maybe I'd just like to pull those. And just to comment on CPark and the comment that was made earlier, CPark did a full community consultation when they put together their facilities plan. And there was the comment raised, like if you put a gym in the rec center, would it take away from other local businesses? And the answer was no. It's meeting a different demographic that is already utilizing CPark, and this is an add-on to enhance that experience. So it may be the case where a family has limited time, kids are in a swimming lesson independently and mom or dad can get in a quick workout, and it can also involve more youth and that sort of thing. So it's gone through that process. Other comments, I just want to pull the two for the Kaltassin piece because there are a few asks in those letters. Are there any other items that anyone would like to extract for discussion? No? Okay. So maybe a motion to receive all those other correspondences, please. Moved by Councillor Berger and seconded by Councillor Loggins. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. So just going on to the other one. Now I have to find it. Okay, so in this case, it's asking, there's a strata, there's two actually, that are at a point where they need to start looking at replacement of their field. And so just given the monies, they're looking at, do they do that, or is there plans to look at sewer coming into that particular area? So that's one thing. We've also heard in the past, or at least I have, that our bridge would not handle any other servicing work. So, but then we've heard that, well, it could. So the residents here are asking whether or not we know that for certainty and to get clarity on that there, and also just looking for how council feels about expansion. So I'll leave it at that. You've received the letters. Councillor Casper?
Well, I think before any response directly to them in regard to the ask, is that there's some detailed financial information, even though it's stale dated, should be included in a package, and that's the cost of servicing Kaltassin area and the twinning of the existing line that runs along Sooke Highway, where it currently is, in order to accommodate that expansion, and also laying out that the cost of currently $6,000 per unit, and all of the other associated costs, which could be substantially higher than what was prepared in 2009 and 2010. There was an update then done, because it's not just as simple as saying, okay, let's run the sewer down here. Mm-hmm. Like, we're talking millions of dollars with no grants in sight. And the testing that's been done by the Capital Regional District has shown consistently there are no sewage problems or outbreaks affecting the marine environment. And the only area that has been plagued with high coliform counts is in the Cooper's Cove area. The highest level of potential impact on the Sooke Basin has been in the area around the Whiff and Spit. And council had made a conscious decision, the previous council, to actually reevaluate that priority of Kaltassin being the number one, and saying that the focus should now be on Whiff and Spit. And we've actually included that in a number of our strategic planning documents, that priorities would be looked at in that area because it's in closer proximity to the sewage treatment plant. So, I appreciate their concerns, but it may prove to be substantially higher for anyone in that area to be hooked up to the sewer than what it would cost to upgrade a system that they're responsible for doing currently, like I am or anybody else who's outside the sewer service area. And I know Councillor Parkinson lives in an area that's outside the sewer service area. So does Councillor Berger. We as property owners, as others, are 100% responsible for looking after our sewage disposal system. And really, I don't see the likelihood of a sewer system going all the way down to this area when we've already been faced with demands and requests from the large tracts of property within the current sewer area. And we're roughly 67 to 70% capacity. So, this isn't just an easy fix. It would take a lot of financial updates. You'd probably have to have a litany of grant requests to the province and the federal government to make it even close to being viably financially available. And I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but really this thing is not an easy fix.
Is there any comment from anyone else at this time on this? Okay. What would you like to do with it? Councillor Casper?
Well, I would move that a letter be sent, at least giving a brief outline that it's not just a very easy fix, and that if we've got some financial information that is stale dated, but it shows a considerable amount of cost as to servicing the Kaltassin area with no grants available, and
Okay.
and then you can start looking at the numbers. But really, realistically, if there isn't a wholesale large petition being circulated to join the sewer specified area from this region, then just one letter in regards to two separate properties, I don't think is even financially close to being justifiable to even look at it. Because it would be a rude awakening as to what the cost would be. And I don't think our staff would disagree with that.
Okay, so right now I have a motion that letter be sent back with any financial information available. Councillor Berger, is there a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Berger. Go ahead, Councillor
Yeah,
Berger.
just a quick comment, just through you to staff. I believe it was when the petition for the 21-year sewer agreement was happening that EPCOR did do costing of what the numbers would potentially look like of going that way. And within that package, you're correct, it was within our first term on council that we did receive notification from the province stating that they would not allow any new infrastructure to be on that bridge. So just, I do remember all of that happening during our first term on council. So just as background information, that we should have that information within the district archives somewhere. I even believe that their parcel fee would have gone, back then it was $4.95, and I believe it would have been up to $7.20 or something, because the way the bylaw reads, they have to bear the cost as well. So it really is quite cost prohibitive. And then maybe I'll also outline, sorry, when people ask me all the time, my reply is just always, it's currently not in our 5-year financial plan. So that gives them some indication that it's not on the books for us.
Okay, good. Councillor Parkinson.
Through your worship, is it possible to have staff do a report on this to see what the feasibility is, what it would cost? I hear information from council previously elected, but I would like to see an updated version of it and not something from 6 years ago.
Okay, so we have this motion first so we could clear that, and then perhaps a follow-up motion would be to request a staff report, Councillor Parkinson, if that's okay, because this is just on the letter. Okay, so all those in favor of the letter? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. And go ahead, Councillor Parkinson.
Through your worship, I'd like to make a motion that we have a staff report on the feasibility of having sewers out in the Kaltassin area and whether or not we are able to go over the bridge.
Okay, a staff report on the feasibility to sewer Kaltassin.
And I would just like to state, if this does get passed, then I would like that included in the letter going to the residents so that they know that we're actually looking into something for them.
Yeah, of course, that would make sense. Okay, is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Loggins. And speaking, Councillor Loggins.
I know one of the biggest issues is the cost for that service as well, and perhaps while staff is discussing IR2 with the Sooke First Nation, they can discuss IR1 and see if that could be part of the report as well. Thank you.
Yeah, so that would include that area. Councillor Berger, sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. I'm hesitant. I mean, I think it's obviously great to have costing in front of us in the current day because it is quite outdated. But for me, that triggers new cell improvements, maybe a whole new cell. We're at 75%. So it's not just the cost of getting down to Kaltassin. We're looking at huge infrastructure costs of updating and increasing and expanding our current plant, I believe.
Yeah, that would be part of it. Mr. Howitt?
Your Worship, Can I get a bit of a definition on the word feasibility? Are you looking for the costs associated with servicing the Kaltassin area and potentially IR number 1 as well?
I sort of, if I may, Councillor Parr, just something sort of high level. If we were to sewer that area, what would happen? What would it look like? What would it roughly, this is just, that's sort of what I would, but you made the motion, Councillor Parkinson, so I didn't want to take, but I'm just looking at something sort of high level here, but maybe you meant different with feasibility?
Through your worship, I would like to see a report on whether it is feasible to have sewers going into the Kaltassin area. And I like the idea of including IR1 because they have been talking for years about servicing that area as well. So if there could be joint funding, that would be a great thing.
Mr. Howitt.
Your Worship, I believe I understand what Councillor Parkinson is looking for, I think. This is something that staff is probably not able to do. We will probably have to go out to Stantec to do some work for us, so there's going to be some costs affected with this. I mean, we can take the original EBCOR report from whatever year it was and try to extrapolate from that, but I wouldn't necessarily depend on the accuracy of it. As long as council is aware that we will require professional help to put this together.
No, I don't think I'm not sensing that level of detail. It's just I think it's the case of taking what we have in the archives and being like, okay, like here's, like what would be involved. And then at the time, then council can request further information, a consultant based on that. It's just sort of a high-level report on it. Is that good? Okay, Councillor Loggins?
Thanks. I think I threw a wrench in there by talking about costs and including IR1, but I meant high level as well on that, just seeing if there was opportunity to work together there.
Okay. Good. Councillor Berger, then Casper.
Sorry to belabor this. And for my own clarification, I think it's feasible to put sewer anywhere. It just costs a ton of money. So unless we're looking at like a very vague ballpark figure, I think I'm going to follow Mr. Howitt's lead and go back to the table and say, are we looking for a high-level ballpark figure, and are we looking for something from the province and MOT saying that yes, we can or no, we cannot? Because really, it's feasible to put sewer anywhere.
Well, it is, but I think it's the case of like how, like if you were to do that, what would be involved, and just sort of laying it out, and then, and what would that look like? It's just to have the information in one place, because right now I couldn't find that easily, even though it was part of those conversations. That report isn't on our website anymore. Like, there's just nothing. Councillor Parkinson?
Through your worship, I would like to see inquire with MOT whether it is feasible to put it over the bridge. Today, maybe not. So that would be really good to know, right? That's a simple question to get answered and have a correct answer with it. I would like to know if there are any grants available. Maybe we could find out whether we could call up and see if they're looking at putting on a grant come in the next year or so. We have no idea, but if we look into that information, maybe we'll find out that there is something for us. So that sort of thing.
There are grants with the gas tax, EBCM infrastructure funds for wastewater, water, all those sorts of things. So, okay. Good. Yeah. All right. Oh, sorry, Councillor Casper.
I just think that this has to be at the most extreme high level, because I don't want to see any false hopes or expectations from any property owners or groups of citizens outside of the current sewer service area. You have to have approval of the voters for a project in hand before you get any grant money. You have to have all those approvals. And I think that even down the road, you'd probably be looking at, luckily, 2 or 3 years before you'd even get an answer. I think that in order to address this letter, that we get as much current information as we have without incurring any costs for hiring people, which would come out of our current sewer service area budget.
That would be the intent,
So,
Councillor
I
Casper.
really,
Yeah.
I don't want it now being reported, oh, we're now looking at the feasibility of having sewers in Kaltassin. And that really is not the case.
No.
It's okay to have a look, but you know what? Council has already made a decision. Its next priority is whiff and spit.
I didn't make that decision.
Well, it's on record. So unless people are willing to change that, then that's the direction we should be looking at,
Well, as
we did with IR number 2.
As Councillor Berger said, it's not in the 5-year financial plan. Period. So it's just information for those, I think, that they can then make an informed decision to plan and replace their septic field. But sewers have been talked about for a long time, so that at least would give them closure because they need to plan for that accordingly. So it would give them that ability to be like, okay, because I've heard how people had to replace their field and then 2 years later had to pay for sewer. So that is still live in the town. It's just a high-level report. Okay, call in the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Okay. Okay, council verbal reports. Anyone have an update? All right, well, I do. Okay. So within the minutes that we have adopted, we have, in recent meetings, have had a delegation from Dr. Ney, who happens to be in the audience here, in regards to the Hertz rehabilitation program and how we had sent a letter of support to use the government wharf, which we received back was not possible. So just to follow up on that there is a possibility that the Sooke Harbor Resort Marina may be revamping their arena. So the request came in, and it was after our agenda was printed that we provide a letter of support to the organization, to Sooke Harbor Marina, to consider moorage of the vessel there. So I'm looking for council to support such a letter, and we will draft that and get that out. Okay? Moved by Councillor Parkinson, seconded by Councillor Pearson. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously, and I do have some information that I can use. Second piece, the Rotary has also come in with a request. They have their Labor Day hockey game that kicks off, and they're looking for a $50 sponsorship ad. It was just our standard business card ad to go in their program. And also, they are holding a golf tournament on September the 16th and would like the district to be a whole sponsor for $100. So looking for council to support the Rotary for $150 for these two events. Moved by Councillor Casper, seconded by Councillor Loggins. Do we have a sponsorship fund or council contingency?
We have a sponsorship.
We have sponsorship fund. If not, we probably have 150 in contingency, right?
Memory serves, I think we're very low. I know the grants are empty, and I know we've taken money out of the sponsorship as well. So we'll take it out of sponsorship if there's funds available. If not, council contingency.
Yeah. Is that good with everyone? One then the other? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Is carried unanimously. You may recall that when the Lions were here before, they asked for us to be event sponsors of the National Band of the Naval Reserve. So they had their concert at Ed McGregor Park yesterday, and I was presented with this certificate. And it was a really nice performance and a reception that followed. And, of course, the band will be performing both days of the musical ride coming up. So that was really nice. I've received a few calls from residents about homelessness. One had said that in a number of different Facebook groups, there's comments about rise in crime, trespassing, people tenting under decks, refusing to move, breaking and entering homes, and that the police were not responding to these calls. So I met with the staff sergeant directly, and he advised me that in any type of incident, they would respond immediately. They would send unmarked cars. Of course, if someone was camping underneath your deck, they would come and move that person off your property. So it's a case where I don't belong to any of these groups, but if that is, that's why I wanted to raise it here. If this is the case, these residents must report this to the police. If someone is standing on your property and refusing to leave, you must call police to do that. They advised me that there has been 3 break-in and enters, roughly 1 a month, June, July, August, which is very similar to, I got the latest stats, to previous years' reports. So that's just something to be mindful of. The member of the public also asked that council hold a public event asking the community to come in and have a discussion about homelessness and to have it in August. I'm not available to do this, so I'm going to put it out to any member of council. Should you wish to take this on this month, please feel free to do that. Okay? And to let me know and let staff know, but you're more than free to take that on and run with it. I will share, though, that through Primary Health Working Services Group, we are planning for a homelessness forum with stakeholders in early September. So this is one item that has been remaining outstanding that we're going to look into further. It's by invite only, and it's to work with the different service groups and also mainly to talk about priorities, mainly extreme weather shelter, because we still do not have anything set up for this coming winter. So that work is currently underway. I've already talked about all the different initiatives happening with health. We are a part of a submission going forward on behalf of Island Health through the South Island Division, Partners for Better Health. There's an October 1st deadline. Sooke pretty much has all of his stuff in order, but because we're involved with other divisions, we're waiting for other communities to do a bit of catch-up work. They don't have the stakeholder group aligned like we do, so that's sort of where we're waiting, but that's just the way it is. The submission is by division only, so I tried to push ours ahead, but the ministry knows, but the rest of it has to come up with it. So that sort of work is already happening. And our notice of motion, when we were talking about dogs on leash, off leash at a previous meeting, the letter has gone out, and so I was advised that at first that it's sent to the CRD board on September 19th for correspondence. That is actually the date of the Regional Parks Committee, so I'm just going to confirm that they're receiving it as a notice of motion. I think that was the intent. It wasn't just to be correspondence. So that is that. And I think that was it. The musical ride is this weekend, in case you didn't know. Probably all know. Should have your tickets by now. Anything else from anyone else? UBCM, our resolution is going to be debated individually. You may ask why that is, and sometimes when many submissions come forward that are the same theme, same language, which happens, they're all combined into a block. In this case, it's the ask is different, and there's no other previous resolutions that ask, so it will be admitted separately for individual debate. So that's an item that's coming forward. I think other members of council are coming forward. We have a few attending still, right? Councillor Pearson's attending, Councillor Loggins, Councillor Casper. You're attending UBCM? Yes. Okay. So just be prepared for that, and we'll see how that goes. I've also submitted my nomination forms for first vice again, or not again, but for this